This video was created by Jessica Lipshu. It is very rare, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this before, where one video takes you off of the fence on a topic, something you may have been observing and you did not know about, you weren't sure about, and it pushes you one way or the other. I understand that I'm not an astrophysicist, okay? But in my job, I do a lot of geometry. It's this point, that point, what's the waypoint or the elevation, up, down, left, right, multiple points, 15 points, where do they converge? Where do they, I think you see my point, okay? You might think that that has nothing to do with being able to do math in a astronomical sense. Math is math, okay? All right, guys? And this video really impacted me, and I really wanted to share it with you. I'm going to go ahead and let these NASA scientists give their analysis on this new information that they're sharing about Planet 9 or Nibiru or Planet X. And I'm going to let them go ahead and dig their own hole. And then at the end, I'm going to go ahead and let you know what it is that I'm seeing and hearing, because this impacted me in a big way. I called Rich Guz right away, and I'm like, Rich, I have a problem here. I have a problem. And called a couple other people, and I'm like, we have a major issue. And Rich understood exactly what I was saying. He finished my sentence. Bravo, bravo. Anyways, let's go ahead and play this. I apologize for running my mouth for so long. Let's do this. Thank you, Jessica.
If Planet X is out there, we'll find it together. Or we'll determine an alternate explanation for the data that we've received so far.
Scientists have discovered some out-of-this-world information. The solar system may have an extra planet to what was thought before. According to research, it's thought to be about 10 times bigger than Earth and would make it the 9th planet.
We found that the only explanation we can come up with for some very strange behavior at the edge of our solar system is that there's a giant planet, a planet that's 10 times the mass of the Earth, that is much further out than Neptune on this very elliptical orbit.
Computer simulations show that the mystery planet, if it exists, would orbit about 20 times further away from the Sun than Earth. However, so far, the planet hasn't yet been observed directly.
We haven't seen it yet, but we've seen its gravitational influence on the outer part of our solar system. So we know it's there. We're starting to look.
Brown and his colleague modeled the hypothetical planet's gravitational effects on several known bodies in the region and found a near-perfect match, which he described as a jaw-dropping moment.
We went back and looked at the catalogs of objects, and they were perfectly, exactly where we predicted that they were supposed to be. That's the moment when my jaw hit the floor, and I was stunned.
Now the search is on to find this mystery planet in the universe's biggest game of hide and seek.
Problem.
There's no planet Nibiru, there's no planet X, and nothing is hurtling toward us.
What we have discovered is that numerous features of the Kuiper Belt, a field of icy debris beyond the orbit of Neptune, can be understood if the solar system possesses an additional 9th planet that resides well beyond.
Who is this guy? Excuse me. He is the, sorry, it's off the screen, Assistant Professor of Planetary Sciences. It doesn't see. Yep, that's it. Continue.
An additional 9th planet that resides well beyond the orbits of the known planets.
When we looked at the outer solar system, we realized that while most of the very distant objects, these objects beyond Neptune, beyond Pluto, most of these objects, they all go around the sun and they're all sort of pointing off in all different directions. But the most distant objects all swing out in one direction in a very strange way that shouldn't happen. And we realized that the only way we could get them to all swing in one direction is if there is a massive planet also very distant in the solar system, keeping them in place while they all go around the sun. And we started looking at this and thinking, this must be either a coincidence or it's caused by something else. It can't be caused by a planet because that's crazy. There are no planets out there. I went from trying very hard to be skeptical that what we were talking about was true to suddenly thinking, oh, this actually might even be true.
So the object itself likely is more massive than the Earth, probably a little bit less massive than Neptune. It sits right in between that terrestrial to giant icy planet range. Its orbit, unlike the orbits of the known planets, is not nearly circular and planar. Instead, it is exceptionally wide, 20 times bigger than the orbit of Neptune. The orbital period of the Earth is, of course, 1 year. The orbital period of Jupiter, the big player in our solar system, is about 10 years. The orbital period of this putative 9th planet is 20,000 years.
We have nothing like it in the solar system, so it's new for us. It is, however, the most common mass of planets that have been found around all of the other stars. People have always looked at all these other planets in this strange mass range and said, wow, I wonder what these are. I don't know what these are because we don't have anything like it in the solar system. Looks like maybe we do. There are many telescopes on the Earth that actually have a chance of being able to find it. And I think that many people will be inspired to use their telescopes. I'm really hoping that as we announce this, people start a worldwide search to go find this 9th planet.
History shows us that it's a bad idea to consistently say we have now reached the end of the solar system and there's nothing beyond what we already know.
And all those people who are mad that Pluto is no longer a planet can be thrilled to know that there's a real planet out there still to be found.
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and let that run through. So, yeah, good job. All right, so I'm going to just run through really quick because I want to address a lot of what these guys are saying. Of course, again, I'm not an astrophysicist, but I think I can go ahead and cover most of what they're saying here. Go ahead.
Planet X is out there. We'll find it together. Or we'll determine an alternate explanation for the data that we've received so far.
Okay. So this individual says if Planet X is out there, we will find it together. I don't know about you guys, and this is not hardcore proof that I'm showing right here or anything like that. It's just an opinion. But I don't have a $20 million or $100 million telescope in my backyard. I don't have an infrared telescope. I sure don't. No. And I don't think a GoFundMe is gonna, if we all pulled our money together and went and put one in, Argentina or Chile, I don't think we're still gonna have enough money. All right, I'm gonna play just
what was thought before. According to research, it's thought to be about 10 times bigger than Earth and would make it the 9th planet.
All right. Now here's the problem. You cannot determine the size of a planet without determining first its location. Okay? We're going to find it together, guys. Isn't that what he said? We're going to find it together. Doesn't every one of these people, you've already watched it, don't they say that it's out there somewhere? We'll locate it. We're going to find it. You cannot even get close to determining the size of a planet without first determining how far it is away from what it is influencing gravitationally. Okay? That's like step one. Okay? There are multiple ways to identify where this object is. Number one, you don't have to actually observe where the planet is. You can observe the influence that it's having on multiple different objects. Planets, is it affecting orbits? And if it is, to what degree is it affecting the orbits? What's the math relation? Here you go. What is the mathematical relationship between the size of the thing that is being affected and the other planet or item or thing that is being affected? What's the relationship between the two of those? What's the varying degrees of change in orbit or whatever you're observing in those things? You run the math and you use geometry, and I'm just like, here we go. How do scientists measure or calculate the weight of a planet? This article is by Scientific American. Okay, pretty credible. So, a sheet metal worker from San Francisco, from California. Okay, I work in San Francisco. Before reading this article, could figure out pretty much how to determine where this planet is at. But we have Barry Lennert here, a geophysicist at the University of Hawaii, provides the following explanation. We start by determining the mass of the Earth. Sir Isaac Newton, law of universal gravitation tells us that the force of attraction between two objects is proportional the product of their masses divided by the square of the distance between their centers. Okay, their centers of mass. To obtain a reasonable approximation, we assume their geographical centers are their center of mass. So, I'm not going to go ahead and read this whole thing. That's how you determine the size of a planet. So, if NASA is sitting here and they are telling us that they know that it's relatively 10 times the size of Earth, they had to come up with that based on the math of its location first. Okay? I really apologize that this is taking more than 13 minutes to show you guys. But to me, this is a very important video. I am so happy that Jessica shared this because I don't know why. Certain things click for certain people, and this one did it for me. Okay? As soon as I saw it, I was listening to this video in the background, and when I was reading some other stuff, and I was like, wait a minute, what did that guy just say? And I had to watch it 3 times. I'm like, are they really all just saying this?
System is that there's a giant planet, a planet that's 10 times the mass of the Earth, that is much, much further out than planet that's 10 times the mass of the Earth, that is much, much further out than Neptune on this very elliptical orbit.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really 10 times. That's a very specific number, not 8, not 5, not 20, not 15, 10 times. That's freaking huge.
So that the mystery planet...
Very elliptical orbit.
Sorry about that.
Computer simulations show that the mystery planet, if it exists, would orbit about 20 times further away from the Sun than Earth.
If it exists, you have an observable reaction to something. It's not happening. Guys, you understand what I'm saying? Okay? Shit, I don't know. I have a whole bunch of really crappy examples that I could use. They have an observable event that is occurring in our solar system. They all agree on that. They're agreeing that they know the damn orbit. They know the damn crap. What's the word? Yes, it's just orbit. They have an exceptionally big or wide oval orbit. They know the size. They're all saying 10 times, except for the one idiot that say there's nothing out there anywhere. Oh, okay, then why are you guys observing changes in our solar system and tilt in our Earth right now that is occurring and nothing's causing it? These people are all liars, okay? Liars. If what each one of them is saying, and they're pretending like math is not math, okay? You can't take 1 plus no other number at all and equal 2, okay? They just took the 1 out, and then they presented it to us like we're a bunch of dumb shits.
Observe directly.
We haven't seen it yet, but we've seen its gravitational influence on the outer part of our solar system. So we know it's there. We're starting to look.
You don't need to fucking look, excuse my language, everyone, because and I know I keep saying this, they could not have come up with the size without the location. They don't need to see it. I feel like should I be a professor at Caltech? I'll walk in there and be like, hey, I don't understand any of your fucking math at all, okay? But I know basic geometry. I'm a sheet metal worker in freaking California. And here's your guys' first assignment. It's basic geometry, okay? Basic geometry. God.
Modeled the hypothetical planet's gravitational effects on several known bodies in the region and found a near-perfect match.
Near-perfect match. I'm sure Caltech doesn't have a $400 laptop like I have, right? They're not working with like an HP that's, that struggles to, it's like got 2 processors or whatever the hell, right? Caltech, I'm pretty sure that they got some bomb crap over there, okay? So their Caltech, their computer models are saying it is a near perfect match. You can't have a yin without a yang. You can't have a green light without a red light, Well, there is a yellow, but whatever. You got to have an up to have a down. People, they know exactly where this thing is at. Why are they lying to you? I was on the fence this morning. I saw this video. I'm off the fence. 100%. 100%. Why are they lying? Why is everything happening? Why are they starting all these conflicts? Why are they building tunnels? Why are people like Rich saying that many truck drivers are delivering food? I know that many of you already know this stuff. I'm newly awake to this Nibiru thing that I just woke up to right now, today, and I'm excited. And I want other people to realize that this is not some bullshit, okay? All these people in this video are lying to you. And, I don't know, maybe there's a math genius out there. Prove me wrong, okay? If I'm wrong, I'll do a video and I'll be like, hey guys, I'm the biggest idiot in the whole fucking planet, okay? I apologize. I totally tried to sell something that wasn't what it is. Okay? I'll do that. No problem. No problem. Anyways, you guys have a good, I believe we're going into the weekend, but people are going to be watching this video, for a while. So whatever day it is, you have a good one. Enjoy the days that we have, because this thing is going to be close. It's not going to hit us. It doesn't have to hit us. It really doesn't even have to come close. Okay? It's 10 times the size of our planet. It's 10. It's time we wake up, because they're gonna lock those fucking doors on those big ass tunnels, and they're gonna be like, "Oops, sorry about that. See you in about 5-6 months when all this hell on earth is over, and whoever's alive when they come out, well, maybe they'll patch you up. Maybe they'll throw you a freaking granola bar, bottled water. Be like, here you go, buddy. Look like you can use water. How was it? How'd it go? How'd it go out here? Shit, we tried to call you. Yeah, the fucking phones were down, man. Yeah. You didn't get the email? Fuck. Man. Oh. Anyways, alright, you guys have a good one.
Hey folks, Rex Bear here with Leak Project. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us this edition. We are going to discuss the latest video footage, photographs, and mainstream news articles pertaining to Nibiru, the Red Kachina, Wormwood, Winged Destroyer, the infamous Planet X. Now, as I've mentioned before, I am neutral on the subject and feel even if Planet X is going to come close to our own anytime soon or in the future, I do not feel it is an extinction-level event. Let me repeat that for the turkey brains out there that spew their verbal vomit all over the comment section. I am not a fearmonger and am in no way, shape, or form telling anyone what to do or believe. This information is brought to the table for you to decide. Also, I do my best to give everybody credit that has sent in photos, video footage, or information on the subjects that are discussed and used in these podcasts. If I missed you, it was absolutely not intentional. Send me an email, and I'll make sure to give credit where credit is due. Okay? Now, I've spent the past 2 weeks compiling some very good photos and time-lapsed video footage of some fascinating anomalies in the sky. Whether it's Planet X, or the moons of Nibiru, or highly concentrated swamp gas, I don't know. Recently, I had an interview with a guest that brought some great footage to the table, and one of those images was photoshopped. It was also debunked by one of our listeners. Thank you, Brian. I encourage the audience that has an opportunity to be a part of these presentations to debunk any image, if you can. The Leak Project was created to get to the truth and bring information to the public that is normally suppressed. All right, now with that said, I have unlocked my treasure chest of Planet X images sent to me from truth seekers in different fields from all corners of the globe. And in my opinion, these are some of the best images I've brought to the table yet. All right, so this first one that we're going to be looking at here, you guys, I think this one's quite fascinating, and this was sent out to us from David Loss. If you look at this image, you're going to see that it was taken from an airplane, and it was on the way to China, as you can see right here from David. Thank you for sending this to us, David. Really appreciate it. Look at these 3 anomalies around the sun. Now, I mean, this is quite the phenomena here. I'm trying to figure out how lens flare could create 3 individual circles like this to the extent that it did without the lens flare wings around it. You guys know what I'm talking about when you see lens flare. If you go outside and you record the sun, you can always get what looks like another planetary body, but once you move the video around, that image moves with it. You can see like a red aura around it, almost kind of looks like wings a little bit. There's none of that in this image, so I think that's a great shot right there. I really appreciate you sending that out to us, David. Now, the next one we're going to look at, this one was sent to us by Christian, and I think that this is just maybe a sundog or lens flare, but it's pretty cool nonetheless, and I just wanted to share it with you. You can see right there, there it is, and then there's the sun right there. So I think that's a sundog, but nonetheless, that's a cool shot. And then this other one I want to go to here, I tried to find this person's name that sent me this email, and I couldn't find it. So thank you for sending this out to us. If you have a chance to watch this video, if you want to give me an email, I'll make sure to put your name in the description for this shot, because I think this is pretty cool. You look at the horizon, and you can see the nice sunset. You know, it's the pretty orange and yellow and gold. Then above it, though, it almost seems as if there's a secondary sun source here, or a secondary light source, I should say. I don't know, but I thought this was a pretty cool shot nonetheless. I wanted to get your opinion on it. And now we'll go to the next one here. So this image was sent by Mr. Ryan, and you can see here's just the regular sun, and then there's the reflection on the water, and it just looks really nice and beautiful and tranquil. Nice shot there. But then after that, he sent me this one, which I find interesting, because you can see this red anomaly just sitting there in the sky, and that is not the sun. So I don't know if that's just an after effect or a glow or a ray of some sort, you know, but see how circular it is there? Thought that one was quite interesting. So thank you, Mr. Ryan, for sending that one out to us. Appreciate it. Let's go to this one right here now. Was sent by Miss Dearman. So take a look at this right here. This is your lens flare. You can obviously see that. That's what I'm talking about, the wings kind of. And then that's more lens flare. However, look above that. You can see the sun. And then above that, you see this other anomaly here. And I don't know if this is a reflection from the sun, you guys, because you can see a reflection above it and below it. Right? So I definitely want to get your opinion on that. I think that's a great shot. Thank you, Morgan. And then here's another one. You can see that right above the sun there's its reflection. Looks like there's another reflection, or dual reflections there, you guys. That's a pretty cool shot, I think. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. And then this one was sent by Daniel. And you got this strange anomaly right there. Thought that was pretty neat. That could just be some lens flare, I'm not sure. But I thought I'd bring it to your attention so you could take a look at it there. Just some more possible evidence. And we'll click out of that. Now we're going to go to the next screen here. This one was pretty cool. Now this one, you guys, was sent out to me. Somebody sent me an email that said, take a look at this time-lapsed camera in Australia. As you can see, it's in Brisbane right there. Actually, this is in Australia. This is in England. And here's the anomaly at first. And it just kind of looks like lens flare, And right now, the time on it, well, let's go back here. It is 1:16 p.m. So 1:16 p.m. And then we'll go to, and this is the 23rd of this month, so just a couple days ago. Now, this is 1:13. So this is 3 minutes prior, and you can see it's still there. Same location. I'm trying to figure out what all these strange dots are up here. It's just probably some smudges or something like that. But you can see here it's 1:08. It's still there. 1:16 again. 1:13 still there. 1:11. 1:08. Still there, same place. 1:19. 1:21. You can see it's slowly moving back towards the sun. Now we're up to 1:34 now. 1:36. 1:39. So I don't know if that's an orbit, if it's kind of moving, and that's why you see it getting closer to the sun, and then it kind of just eventually is gone. But then I went all the way back to, well, here's back at 1:06 p.m., 1:03. You can see it's out here further, 1:01. All the way here, still going back. It's 12:38 right now, and it's right here. So from 12:38, hour later, slowly creeps its way up towards here. Now you can see this strange anomaly right here, this little circle. Could that actually be Planet X or one of Nibiru's moons or something? So this is maybe a reflection of that. I don't know. I mean, I want your guys' opinion. Do we have any professional photographers here that see this type of anomaly when you do your work out in the sun? Let's go back here, 12:35. Still there. Now here's another thing, because you guys do see how transparent it is. And I've seen these before where they got the zebra stripes. We've had Bob on the show, and he's had a lot of images. So there's been a lot of speculation that all these chemtrails are being used to cloak or hide objects past our atmosphere, like another sun or another planet, so it doesn't cause mass hysteria. Though my question is, if that is the case, and if the entire atmosphere has got some type of nanoparticulates that have created this block or this mirror type anomaly so that we can't see planets that are incoming, then how come we can see the moon still, just as shiny and bright as it's always been? That's one thing that I've wondered. But I thought this was very interesting nonetheless, and I'd like your opinion on it, why that thing is just kind of hovering around there. I mean, as you can see, we can kind of go back here. There it is. Bang, bang, bang. And you can see the timestamps right here. 103. Let's just go back here again. 106. All the way to 136, and then it finally starts to kind of meld back in there. So merge back in with the sun. I don't know. Anyway, I thought that one's pretty cool, so we'll close this out. Let me show you the next one here that we've got for you. This one's pretty cool. This one's from Scotty Morgan, and as you can see, there's our sun. Beautiful as always. Very bright. You can see the reflection of the sun right there. And then what about this bad boy? Now, is that just lens flare? And if it is, what's up with this one down here? Obviously, that's lens flare because, So I'm trying to see if that is a reflection from that or from the sun. I thought that one was pretty cool, too. Close that one out. We'll go to our next one here. Okay. Now, I want you to watch this video. It's quite interesting because, well, here, I'll just hit play. Let's start it. Tell me what you think. Here we go. This is in Brisbane. The sun's coming up. What a beautiful day in the neighborhood. What was that? Did you see that? Look at that, you guys. See that big circle right there? Isn't that... Look at that. There's the zebra stripes. And then what's this red thing that's popping up here? This is some strange reflections. Now, when we had Steve with WSO on here before, we were talking about how there could possibly be these giant... You can still see it. I mean, just look at that thing. Now, is that just some type of strange lens flare? I don't know, but take a look at that thing. It certainly is interesting. So when we had Steve on here, he was talking to us about how maybe the military or some real high-tech inventors have connected with the DoD and created this type of blockage around the atmosphere. So we can't see it, so it doesn't freak us out. Now, could that be just a... I don't know what that is, you guys. I think that that's fascinating, though, and I'd certainly like your opinions on it. So that's why I'm presenting it to you now. Here it is. It's coming back up there. There it is. Boom. Look at that. Pretty powerful stuff. So anyway, I just thought I'd bring this to your attention. Let me see if we've got any more goodies for you to share before we close this edition out. This was just a quick update. See if we've got anything else for you folks. Oh yeah, here we go. Almost forgot. I saved the best for last here. In my opinion, these photos that I'm going to share with you are the best I have seen yet of Planet X, of a second sun. I don't know. This is really cool. But Jason sent this out to us. As you can see, he went out there, Mosquito Lake, about 8,000 feet elevation. And when he got out there, this is the kind of stuff that he's looking at in the daytime. Just beautiful scenery. I love this kind of stuff. Some great shots, right? And here's a full panoramic view, I guess you could say. But here's where it gets good. Boom. Look at this. There's the sun. There's this anomaly to the top left. And then you'll see two reflections. Not just the reflection of our sun, but also look at this other one right here. Now, do lens flares have reflections like this? Not that I know of. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not a professional. Look at this one. That doesn't look transparent to me. Looks pretty good. Here's another one. Look at that. That's a cool shot. Wow, the sun is beautiful. Now, here's another one. Look at this. You've got the second sun up here to the top, and then you've got your lens flare there, and your lens flare there. So two forms of lens flare. Interesting. Now, here's another one that he took, and this is in his mirror just to kind of give you an idea. You can see that secondary sun right there. There's our own. It's an interesting shot. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so this one I find interesting. I don't know if this is just from the, enormous solar flares or something like that, but it almost looks like there's two different anomalies right above the sun. I think that's pretty cool. And then here we go. Here's another one. This one's just beautiful. You can see that dual lens flare there. Dual reflections, I mean, from the sun and whatever's above it. This one was taken through his back window, it looks like, and you can see there it is. And then the reflection right there. This is another good one. Look at that. Wow, wouldn't it be incredible to be out there and see that? I certainly appreciate the high desert. When you're up over 8,000 feet and you're not around 100,000 people with a Burger King, a Walmart, a Whataburger, a Starbucks. It's so nice to just be in tune with nature sometimes and realize what we're doing here. And I think I'll close it out with this shot tonight, you guys. I think this is a good photograph to close this edition out. You can see you've got that anomaly right above the sun there, and that's probably some lens flare, or reflection, I should say. It's just great to have people like Jason and others out there that send these images to us here at the Leak Project. I also appreciate everybody that listens to these shows and shares the podcasts on Facebook. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. We do our best to update this site every single day with new content, whether it be about Planet X or many other alternative news topics that have been suppressed by the mainstream media for years. So make sure to check out our website, leakproject.com. Have a wonderful day and be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Good night.
Hi guys, and welcome. If you're gripped by the period of time in which we're in during this magnetic reversal and appreciate it for what it is, one of the rarest, most unusual anomalies in humanity, yet has failed to capture, mainstream media's attention on a more regular basis than what it has, then I think this video alone you're going to find very rewarding. What's happened is, and the reason why this is an alert update, is because we've stumbled on some information today which is very rare. And the reason why I say it's very rare is because usually you only get this information when somebody visits the actual North Pole, and it's came from an unlikely source. You wouldn't believe it, guys, but we'll get to that later in the video. So what we're looking at is that green dot on the map. The map is provided by the National Centres for the Environmental Information, and of course, if you know who NOAA are, you'll know that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Organisation. So they're providing the map and all the relevant information on the map. So if you look at the scale at the bottom, you can see the time period, which is going to become relevant in a minute, and you can also see the longitude and latitude position to where that is. If I try and get it into the centre there, you can see at that left hand screen on the position that it's 86 degrees north by 159 degrees west. That is important, guys, because that is where NOAA are stating that in 2015, if you look at the date at the bottom of that chart, where the North Pole is right now. Now, I can pull up the historical tracks which just rebut what I've been talking about in previous videos. Let's do that right now. Let's get up the historical previous tracking of the magnetic North Pole. As you can see, for quite some period of time now, since the 1900s, it's been tracking almost on a perfect vector easterly towards Siberia. But what you'll notice is that if we're at 2015, why have NOAA included the next few dots? And not only that, why did NOAA include the dots but also show the magnetic North Pole slowing down when we know that is not the nature of the magnetic North Pole at the moment? It has been increasing in speed exponentially, and so those dots should be getting further and further away. Now, I've got the GPS coordinates of each pin that you see there, and I've plotted them into Google Earth, and I've showed you many times. But what I want to show you something in this video is something very bizarre and unexpected, and came about unexpectedly, really, today, this morning, and I could not believe my luck, because not only has somebody actually gone onto the North Pole, but they went almost to the exact, well, as good as you could get, because anyone that tries to track the North Pole and position it perfectly 90 degrees should know it's not an easy job. So even plotting these coordinates onto Google Earth is very finicky, because as soon as you go over 90 degrees, then the heading changes. In other words, if you're looking at the compass, it goes up straight away upside down, and so it doesn't matter whether you go diagonal one way or the other, or left, right, up and down. It's very difficult when you're trying to get a highly accurate position for the North Pole. So, what's my beef then? What's so important about this video? Well, it turns out from the position that these people have tracked it to, it's off course from the line that you're seeing. And first of all, what I want to show you, right, is that NOAA have been forecasting only where the magnetic North Pole is, and not actually taking measurements, and that's going to become apparent very later on in this video. Now, you would think an organisation funded by taxpayers, so you know how they treat taxpayers' money with very little consideration and care, you would think that they would actually not provide a forecast, but actually, if somebody else can go out to the North Pole in the manner in which the results have come to me, then why couldn't they have done that? Why haven't they updated the historical magnetic poles, as I'm about to later on in this video? So they're forecasting. The reason why I know they're forecasting, because I can just go up the dates. If you just pay attention to the 2015, you'll see that as I go up the dates, once it uploads, the new position of the North Pole comes in. Now, how can they have 2016's position if they're not forecasting? How can they have 2017, 2018, 2019, up to 2020? It's simply because they're forecasting. Now, how can they forecast that it's first of all going to slow down? And here's the big thing, right? According to the latest information that I've been able to obtain, and that was from somebody that actually has gone out to the ice last year in June 2014, it's no longer tracking in an easterly vector. And the reason why I think that is because the magnetosphere is actually weakening now, and that pole can be wandering pretty much anywhere. And it'll be interesting now, because this does really throw a spanner into the works, because we was hoping that just one magnetometer would be enough to keep a track on this, because we sort of like knew in which direction it was tracking easterly. So one magnetometer on a heading would have told us that. But no, we did anticipate setting up another magnetometer in Virginia, which was around 4,500 miles away. I'm 4,500 miles away from the actual magnetic pole, so we'd get like two lines intercrossing, and where they intercross would give us a good position of where the magnetic pole was. That's still going to be the case, and that's we're in progress of that right now. I'm just waiting for the voltage boost regulator to come in, so that I can complete the the magnetometer that I'm building right now to do that. So once we get the first one built, then it's a matter of knocking up the second one, getting that shipped over to the United States, and we're going to need it now, because I'm going to show you in the next part of this video that the pole is tracking south, and not by a small amount either, guys. I think you're going to be shocked, and I think the reason why that is, as I say, is because the magnetosphere is weakening now to a point where things are starting to, become unpredictable. Now, it's important that I mention this, that those white boxes now that I've just included, right, are observed pole locations, which means people have actually gone out there and observed from that position. Now, I believe that I know that one person that used to do it was Larry Newt from the Canadian Geological Survey, and he was no longer able to do that because the migrating pole was going that far that his twin-engine Otter aircraft that he used to land on the ice with, as it's run out of range. Basically, it can no longer fly there and back, even with, I suppose, extra cans of fuel to get him out there. So it became unviable for people to get out there on the ice. But as you can see, those little yellow square boxes that I've put up there are the last known locations of where people actually have. We're going to put another one on there, and we're going to put one on from 2014, in the middle of the year, from June 2014. Now, in the where I don't know the technical term. I do know the technical term, but I can't think of it at the moment. But we're going to have a look at the captain's GPS as he gets closer to the North Pole. I'm going to show you the readings for that from the bridge. That's the word I was looking for. So we're going to see not just the 90 degrees north of the new position, we're also going to see that it's date time stamped, and that's, massively important to getting and obtaining accurate information. So we can say that we have, a legitimate positioning of the North Pole where somebody has actually observed it from that location. And the last time this happened was in 2004. So, without further ado, guys, let's get into how I obtained this information. First of all, it was a YouTube video, and it was a Russian nuclear icebreaker ship that now, believe it or not, guys, if you want to, you can book, or reserve a place on this boat and go to the North Pole yourself. So, having found now this icebreaker ship that goes out to the North Pole regularly with passengers on board that want to go to the top of the Earth, or 90 degrees, we're just going to tag onto the channel and follow it year after year, and we're going to get not just forecasted positioning, but we're going to get at least, at the least, ground observations of where the magnetic North Pole is. Now I'm going to show you, first of all, in the next video, the ship that goes out there, and then secondly, I'm going to show you where I've plotted these positions on Google Earth so that we can see the variation in which it's deviated from that present course that it's been following, at least up till 2007, or maybe shortly after that. Let's get on with that so that we can do this thing, guys. So here we are, guys. This is the Victory. It's a unique Russian vessel. It's been in service, I believe, 50 years, and it's a nuclear powered icebreaker, and we're looking at the GPS on board the ship. As you can see, 90 degrees north and 17 degrees east, and the date at which it was making this voyage was on the 25th of June 2014, even there 1 minute past 6. Unbelievable. It's unbelievable where you find this information, and NOAA must have been aware, surely, that somebody had been going over the North Pole, and if not, it's a shame that they've not updated the data. Even recently, I'd been speaking to someone at the British Geological Survey, and they told me the last time that somebody had been actually there to make a recorded position on the ice was around 2007. So even it just seems that us in the West have been totally oblivious to this now passenger ship. You can literally I'll put a link down there so that you can see the link in which you can go onto and book a trip to the North Pole, the exact North Pole. It's just unbelievable, isn't it? It's an unbelievable source of information, but it's just by luck that it's came. I mean, you'd never think that a passenger ship would be going over the North Pole. But anyhow, let's have a look at the ship that actually does do it, and you'll see them here. If I'll just press play. So you can rent this helicopter as well. By the way, I'm not trying to sell tickets to this. I mean, if I could afford to, I can imagine this isn't going to be a cheap trip. But I would definitely be one that would be interested in going on that for just the purpose of finding out where the magnetic North Pole was every year, so we can keep a log on it, because we know how important it is. So this ship goes out there. It's been out there a few times now that I've managed to watch where it's gone out to the North Pole. The captain tries to get it on the spot of where the magnetic North Pole is, or 90 degrees, as you've seen on his GPS. And I don't know how long they've been doing that. I suppose this vessel had a commercial purpose at some point. Breaking the ice for other ships to come follow through, but it's just great that we've been able to obtain the information, because now we've got a location for the magnetic North Pole, and it's not forecasted for at least 2014. So let's put this into perspective then for you guys that are interested in where the magnetic North Pole is, because if you've been following the videos, you know how important this is. Right, where that P is, right, is the coordinates that the Victor found the North Pole to be at. And as you can see, I've put the date in, the 25th of 6th, 2014. Right, two things stand out to me here. First of all, it's no longer tracking in a nice vector easterly towards Siberia anymore. It's somehow deviated more further south, and it's done that by, if I can just bring in the measuring tool, I'll show you exactly what we're getting here. So if we just measure from the the vector that it was tracking in, if we put that somewhere in between these yellow pins that were provided by the GPS coordinates of NOAA, we'll see that it's not a small deviation. As you can see, it's 288 miles deviated off course further south. And the second thing is, if we clear that and measure it from the last time someone actually went to the ice, let's just clear it, okay, which was 2007, to the new position, we can see that it's done around 417 miles in 7 years. So 417 divided by 7 equals 59.57 miles a year, and that's 20 miles an hour, or sorry, 20 miles a year faster than what NOAA and the British Geological Survey have put the North Pole migrating at. And that's a lot, guys. So it gives us an idea as to how to forecast from that point on further. So we could add from that position now in 2015, if things haven't deteriorated anymore with the position of the North Pole, at least another 60 miles onto that. And you can see that from that position, it leaves us around 500 miles or less, actually. Let's see if I can get a better one than that. Around 429 miles to that all-important 40 degrees, and we know what happens at 40 degrees. As I said earlier on in the video, I don't think it even needs to track in a single vector now easterly. I just think it's important that we do keep track of where it is as best we can. Now, as soon as the magnetometer station's up and running in the UK, we'll have a vector as to where the North Pole is with regards to 90 degrees, and as soon as we get the one up in Virginia up and running, we can have some way of crisscrossing those two headings, and it will almost give us a perfect triangulation of where the magnetic North Pole is, to within a small degree of accuracy. It's going to be very accurate. I have said that the magnetometers that we're using, even though they are good magnetometers, they can have an uncertainty to 1 degree, and we're using 3 in each station. So there'll be 3 in the UK, 3 in Virginia, and we're also going to be tracking the one in New Zealand as well. The South Pole, that'll be. So guys, that's where we are. This is important stuff. When you consider what is taking place now, you guys know that I predicted that this magnetic pole wasn't there in the region of the Arctic region for no reason. We wouldn't have polar jet streams, I believe, if it weren't for where the magnetic pole resides right now, somewhere over the Arctic region, but it's tracking south and easterly right now, or southeasterly, and that means I expect to see the polar jet streams, if there's a strong pole, be in formation, but as we know, they're weakening now. I've got something to show you here, guys, and I think you're going to be quite alarmed at what I've got to show you. So I'll just draw up the other map, so at least you know where it is, guys. If you check the GPS coordinates down here at the bottom of the screen before I leave this place, you'll see that it's, like I said, 89.5 is actually where the pin is, and you can just see how much things move on the westerly and easterly coordinates. But trust me, I got it down as best as I could in that vicinity to 17 degrees east and 89.5 degrees north, which is virtually there. If you don't trust me, go onto Google Earth and see how hard it is to put the pin on 90 degrees and 17 degrees east, and you'll see for yourselves it's in that vicinity of where I've marked the P. So let's go and have a look at the other map then, the other chart, because I've got something important to show you as well with that, and that's with regards to the weakening of the magnetosphere and the effects it's having on the polar jet streams right now. So here we are on the global weather modelling system, and most of it is real time. What I want to show you is jet streams and what's happening. So what you're looking at is your subtropical and polar jet streams, and as you can see, guys, they're indistinguishable. You can't tell them apart from each other, and that to me is highly shocking. We've got hot and cool air mixing sporadically across the globe right now, and I think it's to do with the weakening magnetosphere. I was on a website the other day where scientists were, not screaming about it, but they're saying that in the last 6 months, the magnetosphere had noticeably dropped again. It's very difficult to get information from these organisations. I mean, we wouldn't have had it not been for that, Russian passenger boat now, which is a nuclear icebreaker going over the North Pole. We wouldn't have got the data of where the North Pole is accurately as what they did on the spot if they hadn't have gone across the North Pole themselves in 2014. If we look at the SS TA, sea surface temperature anomaly, or as you may know it to be the El Niño, I want to point out a couple of areas first. We're going to go back on the wind chart and have a look what's happening over this region here, but it is a region which is increasing in sea surface temperature. And also a look at this, because these are both going to be affected by the intermingling of the polar and tropical jet streams. you know, that warm and cold air mixing. And you can see from yourself, for yourselves, guys, this is intensifying. If this information is being put out there correctly from NOAA, then you can see yourselves it's intensifying. And we are looking, as other scientists have already stated, to a severe El Nino. And when comparing the worst one we've ever recorded in 97, it looks like it's going to be worse than that, because that was recorded in November time, and we're not in November yet, we're rapidly approaching it. So, you know, I'm just giving you a heads up. This is going to get worse, guys. And I think we all need to pay attention to it. We've got now a southerly deviating magnetic pole at this moment in time. Just look at the yellow regions. These are hotter, by the way, than the red regions. Don't ask me why they did it on that scale. I mean, it just seems more logic to put it in red than it is in yellow. But they did it that way anyway. If you look at the scale, you'll see, you know, yellow's hotter than red. So, you know, if we just go back to the air and wind at surface, and then go back, we're going to start seeing more of these cyclic movements in these regions of where, you know, the sea surface temperature is recorded as being hotter. So just pay attention to these cyclic events in the future. And the region in this place here is where I was telling you another cyclical event could fall into, you know, producing a hurricane at some point if it hasn't already. So, you know, guys, you know, if they're talking about climate chaos, well, you know, you're seeing it firsthand. And I can't think why people would not want to pass on the information as to where the magnetic North Pole is, but perhaps they might be thinking, well, you know, there might be a few people out there that put two and two together, like I have, and understand, you know, what implications this could have. Bear this in mind, guys. You know, I'm going to end the video here, but bear this in mind. This hasn't happened for 780,000 years. So, just bear that in mind. No human historical records of the last time we went through a full magnetic reversal. And you've seen the videos in which I've done on Mars. And what you've got to bear in mind is, on average, this used to go through a reversal every 250,000 years. And it's been 780,000 years since the last one. So something happened there. You know, I'll just put it out there. I'll just what I think. Why not? Is this the end? Is this the last magnetic reversal this Earth goes through? And even if it's not, and scientists cannot deny this, it's showing signs that during this magnetic reversal, when the magnetosphere does collapse, that it will definitely take longer for it to come back up if the magnetic poles do reconfigure at some other point on this planet. Now, when they do, you can expect the Arctic regions to be over those new positions. And not only that, I've said also in a video before, many times in other videos, that the rotational axis is not on the same position as where the Arctic region is and the magnetic North Pole. They're not. They are definitely connected through some planetary mechanics that, you know, I'm trying to work out what's going on myself. But, you know, I don't think that they're all there by coincidence, guys. You know, we could be in for some real unprecedented events during this time. And, you know, as a scientist, you know, I've been slated for saying this, but for me, this is an exciting time. There's lots of stuff to study, but at the same time, I can understand the anxiousness of some people watching these videos thinking, you know, this is really for one happening, and it's really serious. And I just hope that, you know, you guys that feel that anxiety, you know, take on board the fact that, you know, you really do need to start putting up some provisions for yourself just in case the worst happens. That can come in many forms. You know, nature has got an unprecedented power You know, it can throw tidal waves, it can cause earthquakes, it can cause, you know, you to be irradiated by inbound solar radiation without the protection of the the magnetosphere. So all these things is something you need to think about, guys. You know, we may be only just now coming to the grips of the full reality of what we are facing, but if now we understand, it gives us time to prepare. And there's nothing wrong with that insurance policy of having a bug out bag or a bit of extra food or, you know, some, you know, provisions put up for you and your family at the end of the day. If you're thinking your governments are coming to your rescue, then look no further than what happened in Katrina during those floods. And need I say any more? That will set precedents for how governments will react during times of national emergency with regard to these incidences caused by these new anomalies. You know, guys, there's a link down there. I mean, some people won't appreciate, you know, the length of time that it takes to put this in even the order in which I do, and I've got to admit it's not probably the most concise manner, and some of these videos do go along for a bit of time. But nevertheless, you know, the information that's collected takes time. We don't just talk about things anymore on this channel. We're actually building scientific equipment to monitor these things, and we're doing that in the hope that we might be able to give you guys out there a little bit of a heads up. So, you know, it's important. It affects you. If you can afford to make a donation, the link's there, guys. And, you know, I'm just sorry that I have to keep mentioning it. It's a real shame that there's only a few that support this channel financially the way they do, and most of these people make more than one contribution. So, you know, I can only say kudos to those guys. They can pat themselves on the back. You know, you're doing it not just for yourselves, but for others as well. And I know that as well. You know, that's why, you know, I do put the time in and feel that this is worthwhile. I really do hope you appreciate the fact of why I put an alert on this video, guys. I think it was warranted. You know, it's took an unprecedented detour, to say the least. It's no longer trekking in the vector of just easterly. We're now getting a southeasterly moving magnetic north pole, and that's very important. So with that, guys, I'm going to say what I usually do. You know, you take care. Try not to worry, but prepare a little bit at least. And, you know, don't forget to contribute. You know, you're not just helping keeping the information coming for yourselves. You're actually keeping it going for other people as well. Genuine people that can't afford to chip in on a regular basis. So with that, guys, all the best. And what I say, what I usually do. Bye for now.
Thousand companies. He has been able to take his background and transition it into research on Planet X, and has recently compiled an awesome book with a treasure trove of information. Now, one of the cool things that David discusses with us here is instead of having to just take his word for it, he gives you coordinates on where you can actually see it for yourself. And by 2017, mid-2017, he says we're going to see an eclipse with Nibiru. So the implications and the side effects of what might happen to us here on Earth is pretty scary. We're going to get into some of that. David, really appreciate you joining us tonight. How the heck are you?
Very good tonight, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I appreciate you coming on here with us. I know that you had reached out to us a few weeks ago. You've got a really cool book coming up here that's going to break everything down with Nibiru. You know, let's talk about what you do.
Well, the way I got into it, I've always believed in following the money. About 5 years ago, I got into some research on the Pentagon black budget. And I don't know if you recall, but you probably do, that the day before 9/11, Don Rumsfeld announced at a Pentagon news conference that the agency was 2.2 trillion short. Money was simply missing, 2.2, not billion, but trillion. So having worked for a period of time at the Pentagon, I realized this was most likely black budget funds, and I did some investigation, and I ran across a couple of areas, basically the deep underground military base research done by Jesse Ventura, done by Phil Schneider, done by other personalities, and I realized, of course, that's likely the source of the lost money. It's black budget ops, and it's being spent. And why is it being spent in terms of these type of bases? So that's how my curiosity was picked, you might say. These bases, I understand, are built away primarily from geologic tectonic areas, but again, when Planet X passes, you're going to have new geotectonic faults established when you have force 11, 12, 13, 14 earthquakes. So I don't know how safe they're going to be. It could be a lost investment for those people. In any case, that was my basic introduction about 5 years ago, and then I got into the science of the topic.
Well, and science is something that I'd really like to get into today, so we could help the skeptics see some solid evidence to help them prepare, mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever. It sounds like it's going to be difficult in many cases to prepare for this type of event if it is as serious as many predict. Different underground bases. They've been building them for years. You can go all the way back 70 years, and they were building these things, probably even before that. So have they been spending more money since 2001 on these underground bases then?
My understanding, and this is partly from Phil Schneider, I know he worked 11 years at Groom Lake, Area 51. He says the black budget varies between 0.2 trillion and 1.2 trillion per year. I'm not sure when the inception started. It was absolutely going on in the late 70s and 80s. He says a couple of dozen of these may be reasonable for protection. I agree, nuclear protection. But the question is, why do we have over 130 of these? That doesn't really make any sense unless, obviously, Planet X is absolutely a fact, which it is.
Well, so, 4 years ago, I remember reading an article on Yahoo News that claimed eventually people are going to be able to look up in the sky and they're going to see what looks like a second sun, but really it's a giant sun that exploded. I think they said it was Betelgeuse or something like that. So in my mind, when I read stuff like that in the news, I think it's, the forces behind the scenes or whoever's kind of orchestrating the media prepping people, subconsciously getting them ready for this type of event. First, it's just an explosion that looks like a sun, and then, hey, oh, it is a sun. So, do you have any physical evidence, like pictures that you can say without a shadow of a doubt, or files or white papers?
Yes, I do. In fact, there's some very good videos on the internet itself that are good photographic analysis. There's one called Multiple Suns Rise Over Halifax, Nova Scotia. Those are the keywords that a person would enter on YouTube to read it or view it. And you can see the sun. And then at the 3 o'clock position, you have Planet X. To the right of Planet X, you have a separate lens flare. Now, that doesn't reflect the lens flare, of course, in the water below, but Planet X is generating its own light, and you can see its reflection, therefore, in the water below. Next, I think a fog bank moves in, and it obscures the sun, but Planet X is still visible. A lens flare cannot do this. Now, that's one good example of something they could simply look up themselves on YouTube. There's also some good Davis Station South Pole videos out there. And there's, in my book, which is Planet X, The Arrival in 2017 by David Mead on Amazon, I've done a video. It's on page 15 or 16 or so of the book. And I have a section called Photographic Analysis of Planet X. And I study one video which another analyst did an extensive study on. And let me just sort of explain what happened. A fellow named Glenn Vaughn on April 11th, 2015, was flying down the Pacific side of Central America. He's a professor, an ex-professor at California University. He took a 20 megapixel raw file with a Sony digital camera, and he confirmed the report by sending it in to a particular analyst for review. He took it through an aircraft window. Now, an analysis of the metadata indicated it was taken at 240 dpi, very high resolution, and the metadata further showed the date, the time, the GPS coordinates. I think it was a Sony DSC HX50V camera. In any case, using Starry Night Professional version, the video, which is referenced in my book and which is on YouTube, did a field of view analysis, and he determined Mercury is above, in other words, superior conjunction with the sun, and the object in the field of view, therefore, is not Mercury. Mercury does not have wings, as does this object, and Mercury does not have the brightness or contrast of the unknown object. Now, the analyst also performed a gamma test on a paint program. Gamma testing shows if an object is hot or cold. Hot objects generate, of course, their own light like our sun. A lens flare would be a cold object. They read direct light, they don't generated. So he started with a gamma of 1, reducing it by steps. At point 10, the gamma illustrates stark differences. At point 01, he shows the hottest, brightest objects on the video. He then reduced brightness to a value, I think, of -3 in contrast to +2. The hot objects fade in together, proving they're genuine. Then he ran a luminance test to determine the intensity of the object, and he determined it was behind the sun, not a reflection. There are actually wings on the object, which is clearly behind the sun. Now, he stated this is deeply disturbing. The reason is the gas tails of comets follow solar winds, and they're not visible until the comet's orbit is inside of Jupiter, at which point normally the luminosity at that point of the sun makes the tails of the comet or the planet visible. Of course, Planet X, we all call it Planet X or Nibiru, but it is a dwarf star. It's either a red dwarf or brown dwarf star. Now, the object, which is clearly Planet X by deductive logic and process of elimination, is therefore now between Mars and Jupiter. It's not in the outer reaches of the solar system. It can clearly be seen, especially from the southern hemisphere. Now, as of April 2015, therefore, the date of that video and the analysis, Nibiru is close enough to the sun so that the sun's light is reflected to the tail, making it appearing like wings. And there's one other quick comment I'd make, because actually that video had 2 parts. The second part was a lady who lives near where I do, Sanibel Island, Florida, Melissa Huffman. Now, you can look at this video itself on YouTube. I think it has more or less gone viral, and nearly 1 million people have looked at it. And this is a 2015 video. The object is very interesting. She pans the sky and shows the object and then the moon. Now, it's clearly a planet visible just north of the sun. Now, using stellarium and knowing the moon phases, comparing it to her video on the moon, you can go to the derived date, take away the atmosphere and the ocean, and you can determine the relationship of the stars to the horizon. So to determine the date, you basically just use moon charts. And the moon is well below the horizon in all dates after September 26, 2015. Therefore, the video was taken earlier. Now, September 2015 moon phases give us a comparable to the moon in the video. And if you look at the moon phases diagram to the actual picture of the moon, it has to have been photographed on September 23, 2015, based on moon phasing. Now, on that date, Mercury in stellarium is very dim, somewhat above the horizon. Also, I believe it's in a different location than the unknown object. All other planets are below the horizon. The video, therefore, conclusively and plainly shows an unidentified planet, or dwarf star, Planet X, of some significant magnitude quite clearly. So I can reach no other conclusion, and the analyst did himself, than this is a rare photo from this hemisphere of Planet X approaching us.
Wow. You know, and there's also speculation now, and I hadn't heard this until about a year ago, that not only is Planet X going to come our way, this dwarf star, but also a bunch of planets with it, like it's bringing in its own solar system. Is there evidence or truth to that?
Right. There's a number of videos. I've seen some real good ones from the South Pole Telescope, and they indicate that there are a variety of moons around this. It's basically, as you say, it's its own solar system. A lot of people don't realize this, but binary, what we've got in our solar system here, is obviously a binary twin. 76%, this is a fact, of all stars are binary twins. In fact, 16% are trinary twins. There are 3 suns, but ours has a binary companion, and it comes under the name of Planet X, Nibiru, and so forth, Nemesis. There are various names to it. But ours has a binary twin, and it's very common. It's extremely common, and it's basically what is approaching us. And apparently, from all descriptions, indications, reports, insider reports, photographs, and other sources of human and signal intelligence, it contains 5 to 7 moons around it. So it's a solar system approaching our solar system, which makes it extremely dangerous.
You know, and even the most recent Star Trek movie that came out, they portrayed Nibiru in this movie, and the inhabitants of the planet were primitive. You know, they were almost like Amazon-like tribal, what you would think of from many years ago. It's just interesting how they've really kind of pushed it into the media. But from the skeptic standpoint, you can go back to 2003. And in 2003, supposedly Nibiru was supposed to come by the Earth and wipe everybody out, and then it didn't happen, and then it was supposed to be 2012. And one thing that I find interesting, and I'm not a religious person, but I definitely think there's a lot of correlations in the Bible, especially if you read Revelations and things that are going on today, whether it's a playbook for these people or it's just prophecy, which it very well could be. You know, it talks about how nobody really knows the time when basically shit hits the fan. And with all of this crying wolf for 10, 20 years before something like that happens, I can see how the population can become really docile, you know, because they've heard it before so many times. So when it really does happen, it's almost like unbelievable.
Right. There's a lot of disinformation out there. And you have to consider the sources of the disinformation. Obviously, I have a feeling when people join Congress nowadays, whether they join as a senator or at the lower level, that they have a visit from a higher up or from their local NSA agent pretty quick on, and they say, you know, you're going to find out some things that we don't want you to talk about. And if you don't talk about them, guess what? We're going to give you a seat in an apartment at an underground base when this all happens. And so you don't really have anything at all. You have a complete, you know, blackout of news from the so-called authorities of Washington, D.C. But again, what do you expect? You have to consider the source. Now, there's been a lot of Google and NASA cover-up, in my opinion, on this. And I'll give you an example of it real quick that might sort of answer your question and also even move us a little bit into a combination of astronomy and the Apocalypse, the book of Revelation, last book of the Bible. So there's an object I call the Red Dragon Anomaly, which appears in the constellation Virgo. And it currently, very interestingly, mirrors the vision or biblical sign of Revelation chapter 12. Now, this is a critical, major sign. Of course, Revelation is from the highest authority, read Revelation 1. John wrote it on the Isle of Patmos about 2,000 years ago. And in it, he found out that cosmologically the sun travels the ecliptic, and every September it passes through the constellation Virgo. The moon also travels close by. Now, towards the end of September, in 2017 next year, there is a precise configuration of the Revelation 12 imagery. And I've used stellarium, and I've gone back 6,000 years, and I've gone forward 1,000 years. And it's complex and involves the simultaneous interface of half a dozen astronomical variables, but it only occurs once, and that's in September of 2017, a year and a half from now. But in addition to the Revelation 12 sign as it's known, the imagery of the dragon at the feet of Virgo with the sun at the head and the moon at the feet presents itself right now, very interestingly, in Starry Night in real time. Now, this is highly unusual and extraordinary. The Red Dragon of Revelation 12 may well be, and I believe rather obviously is, Planet X, as is referred to in an earlier chapter of Revelation, I think Revelation chapter 8, in a similar manner. A colleague of mine at the university, one university in the western U.S., brought up a very interesting point, perhaps to cover up to my attention. Here it is. Basically, he said, the areas of the Dragon Anomaly have been covered or patched up by Google Sky in the past. But one of the ways to actually see what is behind this patched out area is to use a program called Skyview by NASA. Skyview, what that is, it's a virtual observatory on the net. It generates images of any part of the sky from wavelengths of all regimes, radio to gamma. You just filter it. Now, when you view these images in various filters, you can see the actual color of this anomaly in Virgo is red, and it does look very menacing, as it appears to have a face like a dragon with two profound eyes. It's very intriguing and quite strange. Now, just for your listeners, I'll provide very briefly the right ascension and declination if they want to go to Skyview. And here it is. Just cut and paste this coordinate. Here's the right ascension, 13 hours, 50 minutes, 44 seconds. Here's the declination, and that would be minus 8 hours, 13 minutes and 59.7 seconds. So right ascension is the celestial equivalent of longitude, and in the sky latitude is called declination. So you just enter those coordinates, and then on Skyview you just choose the Iris 100 micron telescope setting, and there you are. You've never seen an object quite like this one. Now, the sign itself might be a sweeping parenthetic of that entire biblical 70th week of Daniel, which is a key to solving the most complex cryptogram in existence, the book of the Apocalypse. As to what it is, the astronomical scientific community, I think, is keeping a very low profile. And the question is, why did they ever cover it up to begin with?
Well, and not only that, if we could get into some of the more scientific stuff as well that you talked about, that you put together, is in your opinion, the Great Flood that's talked about and has been talked about all over the world in other mythos as well. Do you feel that that was caused by this orbital, from Nibiru coming back many years ago, getting close to the Earth and caused some type of giant tidal waves and stuff and earthquakes?
Well, it indeed could have. I'm not positive of the exact date in biblical history of Noah's flood. I think it was close to 4,000 years ago. Might have been a little bit more. Very good question. Now, in fact, what that question leads us into is the main item we have historically in terms of archaeology to help us relate on a scientific basis to a prior pole shift by the Earth is something called the Nebra sky disk. Now, this is a 12-inch bronze disk, the Nebra sky disk. It may be the key to determining the last recorded time in history that Planet X actually flew by the Earth. The disk is bronze. It's inlaid with gold. It was found near Europe's oldest observatory in Gossip, Gothic Germany. Now, the story of the disc is quite unconventional. It was found, I think, in 1999, by German treasure hunters, and they were using metal detectors inside an ancient forest. However, German law dictates that all such relics are state property. So instead of turning it in, they attempted to sell it on the international market a couple of years later in 2002. Now, working for the Swiss government, an archaeologist named Harold Meller, I believe, posed as a straw buyer. The disc was seized by authorities, and then it was analyzed. Now, what it contains symbols including the sun, the moon, the constellations, I think, of Pleiades, Capricorn, Piraeus, and Gemini. Now, the disc reflects the sun in the position of a solar eclipse. What is causing the eclipse? Well, it's not the moon, which is on the opposite side of where it should be located. So I think the best deductive logic is that an unknown near-Earth object is causing the eclipse. Now, this 32-centimeter disc weighs about 2 kilograms. Again, it's decorated with gold leaf symbols, and the gold leaf symbols also reflect 4 planets: Venus, Mars, I believe Jupiter, and Mercury. Now, using modern-day astronomical software, you can plot the actual day and hour the disc was produced, and the result is very precise. It was produced at April 6, 1810, BCE at 8:30 a.m. The disc was thus created during the Bronze Age, which is 3,826 years ago. Now, there's a curved bar at the bottom of the riverbank, the Saal River, which still currently exists. Much of the disc's current coloration is green due to a tarnishing effect. And the discovery site is a prehistoric enclosure in the Ziegelrodes Forest, known by the name of Mittelberg or Central Hill, 60 kilometers, I believe, west of Leipzig. Now, the treasure hunters stated it was found within a pit in the forest near the ancient Gothic observatory. Now, here's something extremely interesting. Upon examination, the disc reflects the constellation Orion at the very bottom. Orion should not have been observable from that location in Germany at that time. The nearest location, in fact, from which Orion, the constellation Orion, could have been observed is Luxor, Egypt. That adds to the mystery. The only logical conclusion is that this 26 to 30 degree difference is accounted for by simultaneous pole shift. So this mystery-shrouded sky disk of Nebra is an advanced astronomical clock. It's a compendium of knowledge. And I think it gives us the best proof of the existence and passage of Planet X in the ancient world. So the purpose of the sky disk is really no longer a matter of speculation. I believe, and others believe, it's the oldest visual representation of the sky in existence, and it postulates and proves the approach of a near-Earth object causing the daytime eclipse, as well as causing a major pole shift that has just occurred, and that was 3,826 years ago.
And have you heard of the Sumerian tablets?
Yes, I have. They were analyzed by a fellow named Zechariah Sitchin, who wrote a book called The 12th Planet back around 1975, I believe it was.
And the stuff he talks about in his books as well, when he deciphers the tablets or translates them, he talks about Planet X and Nibiru, the winged destroyer, and basically a 3,600-year orbital pattern, or, orbital cycle. So it's been talked about for forever, basically, previous generations. And it sounds to me like we're getting pretty close to where if you've got a pretty good telescope and you know where to look, you can go outside, look up in the sky, and you can see it for yourself.
That is correct. Now, when it was first observed, however, back in the 80s, because it's so close now, it's different. When it was first observed, probably the first time it was actually observed, it was observed in the infrared spectrum in 1983 by a orbiting Earth satellite telescope called the Infrared Astronomical Satellite. And this is when all those articles appeared in the Washington Post and the New York Times and so forth. And that's when, right before blackout occurred, there were some articles over a 6 to 12 month period of time when it was pretty much spoken freely of. And then all of a sudden, I think they realized the seriousness of the matter, and they went ahead and produced a blackout. But a lot of times I think many of the instruments that are used to view this object in very great detail are, for example, the Spitzer telescope, which is in a trailing Earth orbit. It's, of course, a satellite telescope, and it's infrared. And the Vatican, they've got their telescope, and that's infrared also. That's in Mount Graham in southeastern Arizona on the top of a 10,000-foot mountain. It has several names to it. One code name, they've actually got several telescopes there. They've got a radio telescope. They're listening for extraterrestrial intelligence. And then they've got the VATT telescope, and then they're also joint venturing a project that they strangely have codenamed, of all names, Lucifer. And
right.
Can you believe it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it doesn't. Right now, to the world we live in, it's to be expected. Well, it's unbelievable.
It's right. It is. And Father Malachi Martin, I remember an interview with him back some years ago. I found out about it later, but he interviewed, I think, with Art Bell or some radio show in 1997, and he said, we're looking for an object, we the Vatican. Now, he was a Vatican insider. He's an ex-Jesuit. He was a Jesuit. And he said, we're looking for an object that's approaching from space. The Catholic Church is, the Vatican is, and we think it's going to approach in about 20 years. Now, that was in 1997, which is 19 years ago. So he basically, I believe he was a professor of paleontology at the Pontifical Biblical Institute of the Vatican, and he criticized the Vatican for not releasing the full content of the third secret of Fatima. And the presumption was the Vatican didn't want the facts known about wormwood. Well, in any case, it just seems highly suspicious that they've invested, all of this money there to, why are they in the strange business of astronomy? Why do they have this large binocular telescope on Mount Graham? It's a near-infrared telescope. Now, the cover story is, of course, they're looking for extrasolar planets and alien intelligence. But they have an infrared telescope. They have to supercool it to minus 351 Fahrenheit to allow it to conduct observations. And, of course, a dwarf star, whether it's, a red dwarf or a brown dwarf, the only difference is the size in those. Brown dwarf never reached fusion stage. It didn't convert hydrogen to helium. A red dwarf is anywhere from 0.8% to half the size of our sun. Anything less than 8% of the size of our sun is classified as a brown dwarf. So it's one of the two. But the way to observe those is in the infrared spectrum. They do have red halos around them, but to determine the heat signature, you need an infrared telescope. So that's what you've got. And anyway, I think another Vatican insider stated that the Graham Observatory is used to study anomalous celestial bodies approaching the Earth. And I think in an interview with him, he compared it to what the CIA did with one of its secret eyes known as the twin to Hubble, Skyhole 12, Keyhole 12. You may have heard of that program. But in any case, the Vatican is set up like a government. It has its own secret intelligence agency. It's called the SIV. And the English translation is the Information Service of the Vatican. And the LBT, their Lucifer telescope, is two giant 28-foot diameter telescope mirrors. And it's cooled, super cooled, in order to observe near-infrared wavelength range. So the question is, what do you think they're looking for?
It's interesting, too, because you brought up the way that a brown dwarf and a red dwarf works, and you talk about how it's very difficult to see unless you've got, this infrared-type telescope or whatever. And I've seen so many different pictures of what could be Nibiru or some type of other anomaly, but there's a few pictures I'm thinking of in particular, and the last show I did on Nibiru a few weeks ago with a gentleman by the name of Bob Evans, he's got probably about 1,000 different pictures that he's been given from people all over the world, but a lot of them I look at and I say, yeah, that might be lens flare, I don't know what that is, but a few of them in particular that he showed, a couple of them that I'm thinking of in specific, and I'll pull these up here in a moment if I can find them. They were like, it was in Italy, and it was just this giant red circular mass. And it almost looks like, okay, well, is that the sun, but somebody used some type of filtering software to make it look like that big giant red mass? But it sounds to me like Nibiru, possibly.
Right. I know the individual you're referring to, and he is a superb investigator with an excellent reputation and track record. So I would guess that, as you say, most of his photographs are quite genuine. And I think we've had the best photographs since about 2010, 2011. We've had superb photographs and videos in 2015. It's getting larger. I think a fellow named...
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, these pictures, David, I'm telling you, it takes up half the sky in that particular area of the picture. I mean, it's mind-boggling.
Yes, there was a series of still photographs taken between, I believe, 2011 and 2014 by a certain analyst who had access to a webcam at the top of a volcano in Central America. Perhaps it was Costa Rica. And I looked at an analysis of that, those still photos. And if you look at the field of view, and if you state the pixel size at each year, 2010, 2011, up through 2014, in the same field of view, it gets amazingly larger. So obviously, in my opinion, the object is approaching us quite quickly.
You're saying that you think it's right now in between Jupiter and Mars.
Right, absolutely. And I believe, getting to one of the main points of my book for just a moment, not only is there a lot of scientific evidence, and again, you look at the circumstantial evidence. You look at these deep underground bunkers and the missing money and all of these things that don't make any sense unless you use a philosophical principle called Occam's razor. The simplest solution is the most reasonable and is the one you should use. Now, getting back for just 1 second, maybe I can even talk a little bit about the John's very apparent description in Revelation 12. It's a very precise celestial event that he talks about. Now, I talked about one particular object, but I didn't really talk too much about what's called the Revelation 12 sign. And in the Revelation chapter 12, if you read the first 4 verses, you'll notice those are very specific visual descriptions that are not referenced again. And it's interesting to note that to an observer on Earth, they will not be able to see this formation. On September 23rd, 2017, you won't be able to see it because the sun's brightness will clothe the entire constellation during the day, and the moon will, I think, only be illuminated about 11%. So it's a pure, specific astronomical indication. And if you look at Revelation 12:1 and 3, the word wonder or sign is used to describe what John saw. Now, in the Greek, this has the idea of an indication. So it appears that they are based on literal visual events that the author of the Apocalypse, John, saw in the heavens or the sky as an indication of what was going on in the larger scheme of things. Now, that date itself is what I call a time marker or a key to a cryptogram. It is not the final key, in my opinion. It's only a preliminary key. That's not the date, in my opinion, when you're going to see Planet X in the sky. You're going to see it at the last possible minute, and I believe I know at least the month, but maybe not the week, but I do know the month when that will most likely probably occur. And again, the analysis comes from Revelation chapter 12. And the September 23rd celestial sign of the woman in the constellation Virgo, as I mentioned, has never happened before and will never happen again. Jupiter has to move in several directions in retrograde and so forth for a period of about 400 days in a part of that constellation to fulfill that exact astronomical requirement. And that, in conjunction with the 12 stars at the top of the woman's head and the moon at her feet and the sun and so forth, these things do not occur in exact sequence except in the month of September of 2017. So again, I would call that some sort of cryptographic key that we need to proceed from. Now, remember this, the blue daytime sky is going to hide Planet X until it eclipses the sun. But there is going to be a full disk solar eclipse right after September 23rd, 2017. This occurs, if you look at moon charts, on October 5th, 2017. And what happens, of course, during a full disk solar eclipse is the sky turns black, and that will reveal at that point, that week, in my opinion, the week of October 5th to 12th, if the book of Revelation is true, because this ties in perfectly with it, that could well be the exact month that we can first see it with the naked eye. So, in my opinion, combined with a predictive computer-generated astronomical model, the Bible, the book of Revelation, the Apocalypse, tells us that the red dragon, or Planet X, or Nibiru, appears after September 23rd, 17, but it has to appear before October 11th, 2017. At that date, October 11th, 2017, the sign in Virgo, the woman Virgo, will no longer be, quote, pregnant. Then the red dragon, or Planet X, therefore must make it an appearance before October 11th. So that seems to be a cutoff date. Jupiter, which is known as the planet or the star of the Messiah, exits Virgo, the Virgin, on October 11th after having spent, I believe, 301 days or about 42 weeks in the, quote, womb region of that constellation. And again, after that point, the woman will no longer be pregnant. So that gives us a very narrow window, just to use the book of Revelation or the Apocalypse as sort of an intel briefing. And the great sign of the woman is described in Revelation 12, 1-2, forms and lasts for a few hours. And according, again, to astronomical models, this sign has never before occurred in human history. It will occur once on September 23rd, 27. It will never occur again. And I believe it places us right at the time frame from that analysis of the Planet X approach to the Earth. So I believe this is something very interesting that's covered in a lot of detail in the book. And I believe, though, if I'm not mistaken, the individual you just referenced, Bob, I believe he also believes that 2017 is highly likely.
You know, that's what he said in the interview. And, you know, he also correlated a lot of revelations and stuff. And it sounds to me like you've definitely done your homework. Are you a religious person?
Well, I would say yes.
Okay.
But I never really studied the book of Revelation.
Okay.
Until a few years ago, until I got into Planet X. First of all, it didn't make any sense to me. I've glanced at it once or twice, but it didn't seem to solve, as you would say in cryptography. So it made no sense until I started relating it to this particular object and correlating what the Bible calls the red dragon with also what it's called wormwood. These are all terms referring to Planet X or Nibiru. They're all the same thing. The Vatican calls it wormwood. Revelation calls it the red dragon. Revelation chapter 8 again calls it wormwood. But these terms are interchangeable. So obviously this is a major astronomical sign that's going to have some very high impact value at a certain point in our history. You know, the Earth has been around many thousands of years, and everything's gone okay so far. And the end is not necessarily going to occur, but things are certainly going to change, and there's going to be major cataclysms. And the Earth is actually very cataclysmic in its nature. Only 500,000 years ago, there was a pole shift. 6 million years ago, there was a pole shift. 6 million years ago, understand, the state of Alaska was near the equator, what we now know as the equator. So the 65 million years ago, as you know, there was a major asteroid collision near Mexico, and scientists say, well, that wiped out the dinosaurs because it caused ash to cover the sky and it destroyed plant and animal life. So we really live in a very cataclysmic universe. And the interesting thing about these asteroids, that Planet X has a tail anywhere from 250,000 miles to several million miles long. And the dust of that planet is red iron oxide, but the tail, especially as it passes through the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, picks up a lot of asteroids, some large, some small, some kilometers in diameter. And these items, the U.S. and the world actually has nothing at all to protect against an asteroid collision. You can't shoot a nuclear weapon at it, because all it would do is break it up into more pieces and you'd have more targets hitting the same area. There's no early warning system. There's no way really to protect against this.
Yeah, I mean, you'd almost have to find a way to send something that could move it, hook up some thruster system to it and have it blast off the opposite direction, because obviously inertia, yeah, you shoot a missile at it and then it's just going to be a million other pieces that are going to fire onto the Earth. So, very
right,
interesting.
And they haven't discovered that yet, to my knowledge. They're probably working on it, and they might have it in 50 years, but I don't think they have it yet. Yeah,
I mean, absolutely. Who knows what they have. So how far before you think, do you think in 2017 it's going to be chaos on Earth? You think that it's basically going to be blowing up, earthquakes 10 times more than they are now? What's going to happen a year from now?
Right. Well, at that point, I would prepare. Now, here's something very strange. I would prepare on or before the fall of 2017. I would conduct emergency preparedness. Of course, you want to be spiritually ready. You want to have a clear conscience and all that, but you need to do physical preparations as well. I think survival gear, emergency food, that sort of thing. And the reason is, and again, all this while, you're going to get increasing levels of disinformation from the mass media until it's actually there. And then they're going to say, whoops, we didn't have any notice, we don't know what happened, and so forth. And they're going to run and hide in what they've already established. But the public is there, and the public has to fend for itself. This global warming, as you've heard, I'm sure, is a cover story. The Earth is heating up from the core outward because of the approach of Planet X. During the 20th century, I think there were 35 volcanic eruptions in a typical year. Now there are more than 35 of these every single day. So basically, when X approaches, that week you see it in the sky, let's say it's October of 2017, for purposes of discussion, at that point, it's not going to actually collide, I don't believe, with the Earth. The Earth is only 8,000 miles in diameter. It may pass 5, 10, 15 million miles away, but it has a very high magnetic attraction. It's going to have a gravitronic effect. It's going to cause the shifting of the Earth's crust. It's going to cause major volcanic activity. It's going to cause tidal waves. And when a pole shift happens, the ocean literally comes up out of its basin. So you're going to have major weather changes, seismic activity, and volcanic eruptions. Probably at that point, Yellowstone, the Yellowstone super caldera, will likely erupt. That could affect up to a third of the United States, cover it with ash. Right now you've got unexplained sinkholes, bizarre weather. So we've seen these core changes, and of course the cover story, the legend that we're given by Al Gore and those types is global warming. Well, of course that's just a total story. And it makes absolutely no logical or deductive sense.
Well, let me jump in here for a second. I'm glad you brought that up, because you can clearly tell a difference now with how hot the sun is. Even if you look at the same temperature, 75 degrees now versus 75 degrees 10 years ago, although it's the same temperature, the sun on your skin even, there's just more heat there. It's almost like the atmosphere has become depleted. It's thinner now, so more of that radiation is actually hitting your skin. And I've got proof of that because I have a radiation detector built into my watch. It's a high-end military-grade watch. You can pick one up at MTM Special Ops, and everywhere I go, I can see what the radiation levels are. And just over the past 3 years, they've literally doubled in my area out here in San Antonio, Texas. So it's very interesting. I'm wondering if the chemtrails might have something to do with that. But the sun also seems more extreme now. So, what is your thoughts on that?
Good points. Very good points. Let me comment on the EMP, and let me comment on the sun. First of all, actually, if you go to the book of Revelation, the Revelation indicates that the sun is going to be hotter at that time frame. Now, the EMP effect, Planet X has a massive tail. It's fantastically charged. It's magnetic. The tail has moons and rocks in it. Now, this can down aircraft and satellite when it passes. It can affect the electrical grid. Now, of course, NASA, JPL, and the other disinformation sources ignore this data. But here are the facts. The Earth has a nickel and iron core. Now, this generates its magnetic field. However, the magnetosphere has large holes in it. The magnetosphere is a static shield. Now, under routine solar conditions, it protects the Earth from coronal mass ejections. But when Planet X arrives, we're no longer under routine solar conditions. Now, you look at Air France, for example. I think that was back in 2009, Air France 447. This is a little bit off topic, but really it's on topic because it's an excellent metaphor, an excellent visual type of illustration as to the power of Planet X. When Planet X hits, the utilities are going to be shut down for anywhere from 3 months on. There's going to be $5 trillion worth of damage to the electrical grid. But let's go back to Air France 447 back in 2009 to give you an example. There have been people that have postulated, and these are very intelligent people, and it's just a theory, but they have postulated that disappeared over the mid-Atlantic range, right in the middle of the ocean. Now, that's involved with the Earth's earthquakes. The EMP between the mid-Atlantic range and Planet X could have caused its destruction. And the same thing with Malaysian flight, ME370. It may have flown into an EMP pulse. The flight path was highly irregular. That's indirect evidence. And this occurs when the North Pole of Planet X is pointed directly at the Earth during its approach. Magnetrons and electrons burned out through an EMP event. I think the cell phones of the passengers as well burned out. So none of the theories really answer in terms of those aircraft. All the questions are fully explained what happened that day, but it could be an indirect effect of the approach of Planet X. Now, also, you mentioned these chemtrails. Now, there's a site, I just became aware of it recently, called Geoengineering Watch. I think Dane...
Yeah, great guy.
Oh, you know him? Okay.
Yeah, I've talked to him before.
Oh, you've talked to him. Excellent. Well, you've probably heard the key phrase, indigo skyfold, and so forth, and I understand that contrails dissipate quickly, but not chemtrails. And I always, tell people, in terms of NSA, nothing is as it appears to be. Always consider the source and their agenda. You look at Ted Gunderson, that former FBI chief, and he said Congress should be investigating these chemtrails. And
yeah, that was back in '97. He actually came out and talked to Congress about it. Weather wars, chemtrails, everything.
Really, I didn't keep up too much with the chemtrails controversy, but it's likely what? Strontium, aluminum oxide, and so forth?
Barium salts, all sorts of other nanoparticulates. They were putting GMO, Ebola virus crap in there. I mean, it just depends on the day and the time and the location. But I do got to bring this up, too, because I've noticed for the past several days, the skies have been chemtrail-free. At least if they were doing it at nighttime when you couldn't see it because you didn't have the haze, you didn't see those nanoparticulates falling from the skies when they do the heavy chemtrail spraying. You can see with your polarized sunglasses on. So I'm wondering why, and I'm wondering if the chemtrails that they do have a part of trying to block out Nibiru if it's visible to the naked eye sometimes.
I think that's very possible. I think they're attempting every type of disinformation possible. For example, let's look at what happened recently. And let's give you a little history on this. You probably know a lot of this, but for your listeners, science admits quite a few points in favor of Planet X. Our solar system is surrounded by the Oort cloud, 50 to 200,000 AU astronomical units, or Earth-Sun distances from our sun. And if our sun is part of a binary system, which it is, and you have a common center of mass, this can disturb the Oort cloud and send comets or whatever toward us. Now, science also admits an asteroid impact is absolutely responsible for the extinction of the dinosaurs about 65 million years ago in the Tunguska effect, or event in Russia in 1908. I think that explosion had 1,000 times the power of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, flattened 80 million trees, 840 square miles. Now, here's the thing. Science admits a recently discovered dwarf planet named Sedna has an extra long and a rather unusual elliptical orbit around the sun. I think it's 76 to 900 AU. And Sedna's orbit is estimated 12,000 years. Mike Brown of Caltech said Sedna's location doesn't make any sense. Sedna shouldn't be there. There's no way to put Sedna where it is. It never comes close enough to be affected by the sun, but it never goes far enough to be affected by the stars. Now, this fellow Brown is part of a Caltech team that claims to have discovered the 9th planet earlier this year, in 2016, and as you know, Pluto's been demoted. It's no longer considered a planet. But Brown's calculations suggest Nemesis, or the 9th planet, whatever they want to call it, is 10 times the mass of Earth. Now, science also knows, as I mentioned, that binary star systems are very common in our galaxy, and red dwarfs are very common. They're the most common type of star in the galaxy. So the existence of Planet X, the Planet X system, is therefore quite in line with the current knowledge base. But to wrap it up, this so-called 9th planet, recently disclosed in January of this year by the NASA people, never a straight answer, is a combination, in my opinion, of information and disinformation. It's what we would call in the intel community a Bush League type of propaganda. My advice to anybody thinking about this or thinking about doing too much research on on this quote discovery of the ninth planet. Don't major on minors. I don't study their announcement too much or pay much attention to it. Now, the real Planet X is in the vicinity of Mars and fast approaching Earth. It has no direct relationship or indirect relationship to this recent discovery, and this so-called discovery is just one more piece of evidence, in my opinion, that the powers that be are running scared and making mistakes as they go.
Well, certainly making mistakes as they go sounds like a common theme for them. You know, and also you look at so much today as far as pollution and, you know, just the fracking that's going on around the world right now. There's so much oil that's available. They're running out of space to put it. And if those things go, you know, those fracking systems, and like, let's look at LA, for example, all the methane that's getting leaked out there. There's just this huge emergency. It's not really being talked about much now. It was a few weeks ago, but now it's hush hush. You know, who knows how many people are going to be affected by that. You've got these nuclear reactors next to fault lines. I think there's 55 nuclear reactors next to the Madrid fault line alone. You've got, you know, the San Andreas fault line, and you look at Fukushima and what happened out there and how much pollution to the environment from these nuclear active particulates that are just all over the place now. And I wonder what's going to happen, like you said, if there's just this giant blackout and if power isn't available to these nuclear facilities, or if there's an earthquake and some of these reactors get, you know, affected by it. How are they going to keep the rods cool? What happens if Carlsbad, New Mexico, where they've got just tons and tons of nuclear waste there? What happens if something goes out there? You know, what's next? How do people protect themselves? Do they even want to be protected, or would they be better off just dying quickly?
Well, very good points. You know, there's the fellow I'm sure you've heard of, J.R. Moore, the radio show, and he's interviewed some U.S. Navy veterans, and they were told the end results of all this, but they really weren't told the why of it, and he was told it on a discrete basis. You may have seen the U.S. Navy map of future America where the coasts are flooded and so forth. Well, now, you know that the magnetic poles have been shifting towards Russia at maybe 40 miles an hour a year, but when Planet X arrives, the physical poles will shift. Now, this will create some hyper-earthquakes, tsunamis, and the shifting of land masses. So if you want to look at a few different states, one thing people can do to protect themselves is simply be in the right location when it happens. Now, there's a few states to avoid. And California is highly dangerous. It's composed of rock plates. Now, when rock is compressed, it breaks, and you'll see the crumbling of rock, of course, as its mass goes upwards. Now, the West Coast will have major catastrophic changes, synergistic proportions, tidal waves, high hurricane-force winds, earthquakes on the fault lines, volcanic activity over the magma, forest fires caused by what's in the tail of Planet X, and also caused by volcanic explosions, severe lightning storms. So it's highly dangerous, and I think the long-term danger is in riding out the shifts for those who are living near the boundaries of plates. Now, cities without mountains as a backdrop can just be washed out to sea. You'll have broken gas and water lines. San Francisco, it's on the San Andreas and other fault lines. A lot of the population will be trapped. Water will overflow the city. Survival will be minimal. California is not a good bet. Now, the area around Arizona, on the other hand, the Hoover Dam probably won't survive because of earthquake activity, and you'll have rivers flooding, and areas within rivers should probably be avoided. But you look at Phoenix and some of these main cities. Arizona has withstood many a pole shift. The area around Tucson is safe. Florida is another very dangerous state. Its highest elevation is 105 meters in the Panhandle. But as for Central and South Florida and the Keys, these parts can be devastated by a tide of water. Colorado, for example, is a safe area. The domestic division of the CIA is relocating to Colorado. That should give viewers many clues right there. Right. Eastern Colorado, descends into plains, has rivers. Some of these may be a border safety. And, of course, one of the safest parts of the country is the Ozarks, northern Arkansas, southern Missouri, average elevation close to 1,000 feet, self-sufficient water supply, agricultural land. They'll do well. They're also isolated from large metropolitan areas, and they're well enough inland to avoid flooding through, tidal waves. So it's part of the preparation is probably geographic. But I would expect when it hits, when you see this object in the sky, you'll have 1 to 2 days to accumulate all of the emergency food and water you can. I would accumulate at least a 3-month supply. Now, the strange thing is about this whole thing is that Congress could have done something about this electrical grid. It could solve it for $300–400–500 million. They've never done anything to harden it. The military has parts of their grid hardened, but the Congress has never done anything. And yet they know that the estimate of a 3-month downward collapse of the U.S. electrical grid will cost the nation in excess of $5 trillion. So I don't understand the thinking, but this is Congress, so that's it.
I think they're probably trying to protect themselves as well. Maybe they are being offered a nice, 1-bedroom apartment about 15 stories underground, and they'll be okay. They won't have to worry about anything during the catastrophe. But, how long is this going to last?
Well, the effects could last as long as the electrical grid is down. When the electrical grid is down, as you know, you'll have a certain percentage of automobiles that simply, and trucks that will simply fail because of the EMP pulse. An EMP pulse, for your listeners who maybe are not too familiar with it, it basically can occur several ways. One way it can occur is through a nuclear explosion. For example, if North Korea were to have a rogue container ship or something like that, and they were outside the continental United States, or Russia had a drone submarine, and they exploded a nuclear weapon of a certain tonnage, a certain blast radius, 250 miles above Kansas City, it would basically knock out 99% of our electrical grid, as well as part of Mexico and Canada. But an EMP effect from the sun, a solar flare, can do that as well. And let me explain a little bit about solar flares. The biggest flares to date are called X-class flares. And now Y-class exists, but they're off the charts. Now, as I mentioned, the Earth is surrounded by the magnetosphere. It begins at about 1,000 kilometers and goes many more into space. And the sun and the Earth's magnetic field create this layer. But NASA discovered through a Themis mission that the Earth's magnetic field contains a hole, which is 10 times larger than they previously believed. Now, the magnetosphere shelters us from solar flares, but the hole is now 4 times the size of the Earth. So, in any case, the risk assessment, the worst case scenario, is if you have a violent CME that accompanies a Y-class solar flare, would come to us in a 1-2 punch. That would send the part of the Earth exposed to it back to the 1850s. It would affect all circuitry, all electronics. You wouldn't be able to do banking. There wouldn't be food after a day or two because there wouldn't be transportation. Only military, facilities would really survive and prosper, but not civilian facilities. And it's similar. We don't really have any experience with it in the last 100 years. In the late summer of 1859, the Carrington event happened. That was a great solar storm that hit the planet, and that was a coronal mass ejection from the sun, and that affected telegraph lines and burned them up. But that's about all. That was the greatest solar storm in recorded history. And the electrical grid was in its infancy, a few telegraph wires in larger cities. And it did short-circuit the wires. It caused massive fires. The aurora borealis was seen, I think, as far south as Cuba, Rome, and Hawaii. And in 1989 and 94, I think going forward, you had minor solar storms that knocked out communication satellites and shut down power plants, disrupted the electrical grid. But these were minor solar flares. So imagine if a solar storm the size of 1859 struck our modern society. You've got delicate wires that run everywhere, filaments, computer chips, hard drives, cell phones, electrical lines, and your vehicle's computer system. And so the perfect solar storm could send the country back to, the Stone Age, basically, for anywhere from 3 months to I don't know how long. It's really hard to say. It would depend on the damage to the transformers and how quickly they were able to be repaired or replaced. And if the solar event affects the entire Earth, they probably are not going to be replaced too quickly. It might just affect the northern and southern hemisphere, but if it affects the whole Earth, which it could be years before things really return to completely normal.
And with that said, if things get that bad, let's talk about the military situation and a martial law type possibility. In your research, in your opinion, what's going to happen with, what's going to happen with the cities, with the survivors?
Well, I would say where you are, you're going to be. When this happens, you're not going to want to drive a car 50 miles. Number one, you've got a 50-50 chance to leave and start, and then where would you be going anyway? And you'd be moving away from your food and water supply. So where you are is where you're going to be. Now, hopefully where you are at that time, there's a concept, a theory called strategic relocation, where you don't want to be too near a major city like Houston or New York City or Atlanta. You don't want to be too near Miami, for example. You want to be in a smaller area. Maybe you want to be on a small island that has a population of 3,000 people in the Gulf of Mexico. Maybe you want to be in a suburb or in the country some distance from a metropolitan area. But wherever you're going to be at that point, you may be there for a long, long, long time. So you want to consider, seriously, I would say, consider where you are keeping residence.
I mean, absolutely, Houston. I can't even imagine what that place is going to be like if something like this happens. I mean, Zach, you can just go to YouTube and watch a 5-minute video on how some people react to Black Friday when they don't get their flat screen TV for $100. They'll punch a 80-year-old woman in the face that can barely walk. And they're 300 pounds. I've seen that before at Black Friday on TV and YouTube. It's terrible. To see that kind of stuff. But
yeah, Katrina. Katrina's an example. I mean, that was what was that? I mean, the shelves were, I think, were just no food on the shelves after 8 hours. Hurricane Katrina. So the supermarkets don't carry that much. They carry maybe 2 to 3 days maximum inventory. So those would be cleaned out within 24 hours, and there would be no food at that point. So martial law would be necessary to keep things under control, you'd probably have it.
Now, do you feel that the military will even have the opportunity to keep stability and structure, or do you think it's just going to be full-on chaos?
I would imagine the large cities complete chaos, because the military is going to be hampered in terms of any type of rescue operations. And you know, it's strange. Russia and China might have a better chance at this than we do, because Russia has over 10,000, in my knowledge, they have over 10,000 of these shelters, and they have some of them that are built into the sides of mountains that are 250,000 capacity. China has such large underground structures that they keep entire submarines and jet aircraft stored inside the structures themselves. So some of these other countries seem to be a little more prepared, I think, than we are. We have supposedly prepared for the elite. We have got these deep underground military bases, but the normal populace has not been really given any information, and they haven't been, not only have they not been told anything, but nothing's been done in terms of preparation for them.
I'm trying to remember that website that's out there. It's a statistic website that a lot of military corporations, Fortune 500 companies, etc., will use their statistics, and they have different statistics at different years of the populations around the world, and each country and province, etc. America, in I think it was 2028 or 2029, they calculated that the population was going to be something like 17 million.
That's a very interesting concept, and that's one of the few concepts I really have not researched and I don't have a knowledge base on. So you may know more about that than I do at this point.
Well, and if that's true, you know, if they are expecting there to be, if there's these think tanks out there that are in the know, they're expecting there to be approximately 17 million people in North America 11 years from now, and what you're talking about, and if our country isn't prepared except for the elite, and these other countries do have more preparedness and structures, then that makes more sense with what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So again, I think one way people can prepare is to simply read a book, read the product of years of research, read my book, read somebody else's book, go to the right web pages, do your own research, do your own thinking, use your head, but you do need research, and to accumulate the type of research you can find in professionally written books can take 1 or 2 years. It might be easier just simply to buy a book. So I would highly recommend people educate themselves, understand the whole picture, and probably take action at that point.
You know, you were really into forensics, and I was just wondering if you could talk to us a little bit more about that and what you did, because you can tell you're very well versed.
Oh, good, sure. Yeah, basically I was involved in, I've written some books on corporate governance, on fraud cases, fraud investigations. That's what I was involved in. I worked at a very high level of both the government and also with some Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000 companies. And I wrote reports basically for in the latter case for the board of directors. And I would do, I was more or less a specialist in research. I was an investigator, and you know, my reports were very highly detailed. And I've written a book, in fact, on research, and I've written a book on corporate governance. So I'm you know, very familiar with all of the problems these large corporations have had, starting with Enron and WorldCom and so on down the line. And you haven't heard much lately about it, but for about 10 years, it was an unbelievable situation. And that's the period of time when I was involved in on the good side of the investigations and watching what happened and writing about it.
Hello, everyone. Recently, one of our Facebook followers, an avid Planet X observer, described their difficulty in convincing friends and family that something is appearing in the sky, that is on a trajectory that will bring it very close to the Earth. Their concern was primarily centered around the belief that as time passes and nothing happens, that the claims of an apocalyptic event will fall by the wayside, as such claims, at least on the surface, will prove to be outlandish and unrealistic by the people that this individual is earnestly trying to convince. In an effort to provide a bit of assistance to this individual, I began listing reasons why this planet or system of planets exists, and I've come up with a series of verifiable and realistic reasons for its existence that you, as an observer of the sky, can share with your neighbors and family. Regardless of the extent of their knowledge or their lack thereof, This can be a resourceful list that can be presented without being labeled as a crackpot. After publishing more than 70 videos on this subject, I thought that maybe it would be appropriate to provide my reasons why Nibiru, Planet X, is real, and how NASA has become an unwilling accomplice in verifying its existence. I'll start with the first one that comes to mind, and probably the most compelling argument for the existence of Planet X. You have heard me talk about this before, but for the sake of those who may be novice or inexperienced regarding this subject, let's be mindful of what has already been proven to be true. NASA announced to the world in 1983 that Planet X was on the fringes of our solar system. They said it was virtually knocking at our door. The story was covered on the front page of the Washington Post and the New York Times, two of the most prestigious newspapers in the world. Soon afterwards, then-President Ronald Reagan made the declaration part of the United States national security mandate, which in political terms means he made it illegal for astronomers, scientists, government agencies, and institutions of learning from speaking publicly about this discovery. He forced this mandate because he was convinced that the public would panic if they understood that a large planetary body was entering our solar system that had the potential to cause global cataclysms on an epic scale. He convinced other nations to follow suit, and it then became top secret information, where only bits and pieces were allowed to leak out to the public. There are many stories from ancient civilizations the world over that describe a large planetary body that returns to our solar system periodically, causing destruction in the form of superfloods, earthquakes, and volcanic activity. If you take the writings of the Sumerian world, considered the cradle of civilization, and compared them to the stories spoken by the Aborigines of Australia and the teachings of Holy Scripture with respect to wormwood, you will discover that each of these stories has a similarity that cannot be considered a coincidence. And here's why. The Sumerians were the people of Babylonia who actually named this planet Nibiru, or Planet of the Crossing, and did this in their own language. One of the reasons why this is so convincing is that the Sumerians actually discovered Pluto and included it in their model of our solar system, which is in direct contradiction to the fact that our own astronomers didn't announce the discovery of Pluto until 1930. The other reason this is so convincing is that many of these civilizations have no correlation with one another, and their writings were from different time periods. And so common sense would tell you that their stories originated independently from one another. If you doubt this, then I would recommend that you read Zacharias Sitchin's books on Earth Chronicles. Now, for someone who has been labeled as a fraud or imposter by those who know absolutely nothing about this man's character, his books have sold tens of millions of copies worldwide and have been translated into more than 25 languages. This is quite an accomplishment for someone who some folks believe is a crackpot. If you have done any research, you may know why public and private astronomers alike are searching the sky for the elusive planet. In 1894, Percival Lowell, a wealthy American businessman, financed the building of the Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona. Part of the Lowell Observatory's original mandate was to specifically look for the mysterious planet, thus establishing profound proof that America knew of its existence over 100 years ago. They searched the skies for over 30 years and thought they had found it in 1930. but it turned out to be what we call Pluto, and determined it wasn't large enough to be Planet X. This compelling piece of evidence is not widely known or talked about, but shows that certain groups within American society knew of this planet's existence and its potential for devastation. Although rarely talked about, the phenomenon of an increase in the Earth's wobble observed by the public worldwide is included in the top 5 reasons for its numbers of observations made by the public. Here's an important observation that has been reported by farmers around the world, who are consistently viewing the sky as part of their livelihood as the world's food producers. Since the year 2005, they have been noticing how the sun and the moon have been rising and setting in abnormal positions. Now, there can be no mistake about this, since their observations have been corroborated by the Inuit elders, the Eskimo civilization of the Arctic frontier. This is what they told the world just a few short years ago about the Earth wobble and the changes to our sky. So here's what we know about the movement of Nibiru Planet X. It is an unnatural orbit. It does not reside on the galactic plane where all other normal planets reside. It enters our solar system from the galactic south. That is exactly why this system can be seen more easily from the southern hemisphere. And this is why large astronomical observatories have been built in this part of the world. There is sufficient evidence of an abnormal Earth wobble. They include unusual changes in the jet stream resulting in extreme weather-related events, an increase in tectonic stress, an increase in volcanic eruptions, and the melting of the polar ice caps, which have been thoroughly documented by leading scientists and geologists. Irrefutable photos and videos of second sun sightings the world over is another evidential link that cannot be ignored. Some will say every one of these images are indicative of lens flares, unless they can be proven without a shadow of a doubt. Yes, of course, we live in a digital age of computer graphics and technology. Some can be easily faked or misidentified as lens flares or sundogs, dust smudges, or some natural phenomenon. But many are not, and those that are not fake are usually the ones that are subsequently removed. Why would you censor them if they were in fact fakes? The censorship of Planet X information is very compelling. But if something is real and is then deleted, it can no longer be used as evidence because it will be inaccessible to the public. In the past, I have had to delete a number of profound links and videos from articles published on my media news sites because they have been removed from the internet for reasons that cannot be explained. One of the most compelling reasons for the existence of Planet X has to do with the so-called secret preparations that the world's governments have been conducting since the mid to late 1970s. I talked in length about this in my previous video, which coincidentally sparked a considerable amount of interest across social media and in the channel comments section of the video description. The preparations that are ongoing include, but are not necessarily limited to, underground sanctuaries and military installations. Stockpiling of supplies, which include food, water, seeds, weapons, ammunition, gasoline, and other pertinent necessities for survival. FEMA has constructed ready-made camps in various locations in the United States, away from coastlines. The camps are sitting there empty, but why exactly were they built? For what purpose? In China, they have constructed ghost cities within their vast interior, well away from coastal areas, populated by rural residents at the insistence of the Chinese military. The construction of camps can be interpreted as meaning one thing. They are anticipating the destruction or the elimination of large populations of their own citizens. One can determine that its purpose is to keep the impending cataclysms a secret for as long as possible. Unexplainable phenomena should be enough to convince even the most die-hard naysayer that our planet is changing exponentially. Since the beginning of the millennium, leading up to the present time, there has been a considerable increase in all of the events shown here. All of these events have one common denominator, the increase in the Earth's wobble, which can only be caused by another large magnetic influence in our solar system. But remember this one important reality. These events can be easily explained away and censored by the mainstream media and the powerful elite. The concerns of the public can be quickly quelled just by saying that these are natural events or events caused by human negligence. This then allows those in power to keep the public second-guessing, keeping them from connecting the dots and seeing the bigger picture. This is where you, as a sky watcher, should use common sense and draw your own conclusions that not all of these events can be just a coincidence. One of the most compelling reasons to show that the powers that be are frantically attempting to limit public perception of a potential global cataclysm is the misrepresentation or the underreporting of large earthquakes and volcanic eruptions on a global scale. In 2003, the United States Geological Society lowered the earthquake rating system by 1 point, thus allowing them to convince the public that large earthquakes were not on the rise. This shows the USGS duplicity in the matter, and people may have noticed that almost every major earthquake in the last 10 years is immediately downgraded by this institution. This certainly shows a pattern of deceit if you follow this with any sense of concern. Volcanic eruptions are more difficult to determine, but here is something quite striking. It is estimated that there are more than 3 million fissures, volcanoes, and magma flows that litter the ocean floors worldwide, with around 3,000 on the surface. One major volcanic eruption can pour more carbon dioxide and other poisonous gas and pollution into our atmosphere in one day than all of the man-made pollution we have released into the atmosphere in the last 100 years. Consider how this would affect the environment when multiple volcanoes are erupting worldwide at the same time, and you have a recipe for disaster that could well lead to a mass extinction level event. Here is something very interesting. Many believe the comet Elenin was so named as a warning to global elitists that Nibiru had arrived in our solar system. It's believed to be an acronym for Extinction Level Event. Nibiru is near. Doomsday prophecy and channeled end-time scenarios should not be overlooked when it comes to the existence of Planet X, since much of this information comes from Scripture, which millions of people accept as the accurate description of our history and the Word of God. When we consider that the Ten Commandments and many other stories in Scripture and other texts, such as the Kabbalah, are channeled information from a higher power or source, then how can we dismiss New Age channeling out of hand? You can't believe in one form of channeling and then dismiss another simply because it wasn't included in the Bible or came afterwards. There are books about past life regressions, channeled information, and alien messages that indicate our Earth has undergone past polar shifts. Noah and the Ark is a confirmation that gives validity to this story. Are Hollywood depictions of doomsday scenarios, such as the movie Melancholia, a mere coincidence or a form of end times prophecy? Could the millions of sightings of UFOs all over the world be a warning to humanity that alien life is here for a purpose that goes beyond mere curiosity? There is an eerie similarity in scope and description in the vast amount of research about aliens and UFOs, and the channeled information from such clairvoyants and seers such as Nostradamus and Edgar Cayce. This reason I have saved for last: the overwhelming so-called scientific evidence that polar shifts have happened in the Earth's past. From a geological standpoint, the evidence is certainly overwhelming and has been confirmed many times over, even though it has not been widely recognized in the public perspective, even though dozens of research papers and studies show this to be true. What is suspect in their findings is the reason given for these past shifts, which has nothing to do with a rogue planet or a system of planets. Here is something I want you to know when you consider each of these findings by leading scientists. Many of them are paid and supported by government grants to publish conclusions on what the government wants you to know. Therefore, the evidence is shaped to fit the theory or the idea. The same could be said of astronomers. Many of them either work for NASA or for agencies tied to government research institutions. Because of this, they can be held to the national security mandate that was implemented by President Reagan in the early 1980s. So think about that the next time you ask why so many astronomers haven't said anything about Planet X. If your livelihood is linked to an agency that wants information kept from the public, you will lie, you will falsify documents, and you will create new theories to back their agenda. I could list more reasons for the existence of Planet X, as it is all too real for me, but I want you to do some of your own research. Search the internet. Read up on book publications dating back 100 years. Or if you prefer not to read, check out the many videos and movies and documentaries on this subject. It is our best means for seeking the truth. If Planet X is an elaborate hoax designed to spread fear throughout the world, then it has to be considered as the greatest of all. I've been accused of being a fearmonger just because of what I believe in and because of my sincere desire to warn others. And that is okay. I can handle that. You see, it has to do with a more noble cause. It is a part of our spiritual orientation and development. This is the moment in our existence in which we determine whether we live to serve others or to serve ourselves. It is a matter of choice. Some of you have already seen what is coming, either through your visions and dreams of its reality, or through your diligent observations of the sky. Through your own intuition coupled with spiritual guidance, you have come to know and understand these things. Not all of us are blessed to see its existence in its physical state. And yet, because of humanity's propensity not to believe anything that they cannot see with their own eyes, then many will have a difficult time in believing what the rest of us know to be true. Even so, we shouldn't stop recognizing how all of this is affecting the earth. Many are under the false assumption that something this big or this important just couldn't be kept from the public, and that out of the goodness of their hearts, the governments would inform their citizens if this were true. But the reality is they cannot inform you, and they will never inform you. How can you possibly tell 7 billion people that something is coming that the world cannot control? The global elite will seek shelter in their underground cities, but even these places will crumble by the magnitude of what is upon us. Current research and data now suggest that we are living in a time of global flooding and devastating changes thrust upon the earth by powerful forces unknown to this generation. Understanding my reasons for the existence of a Planet X or a Nemesis system may in the long run help many of you to seek the truth as to why our planet is facing perilous times. I have come to the realization that my purpose in life, irrespective of my personal accomplishments, is and has been to be of service to others in the latter days. Here is something that I know to be true. The ancient cultures and civilizations left many clues as a warning to future generations. And this is how the powers that be knew when and where to look for that planet that we call Nibiru, the planet of the crossing. It is a matter of simply connecting the dots.
Back in the 1950s, most people aren't aware of it, but there was a scientific storm in America all through the late 50s about this thing out there in space, because the astronomers were all watching it, and that was back when they weren't afraid to talk about it. It was in the science magazines. I mean, I had a subscription to, like, Popular Science, and hell, it was on the front cover of the magazine one day in, like, 1961. And I was really excited when I saw it, because here's this giant red planet on the horizon of the California coast, and a humongous tidal wave coming in towards the coast. And having grew up in the mountains of the Sierras, and this thing in the magazine, it said this tidal wave coming in was going to be at least 3 miles high. And I went in and showed it to everybody in the house, and they laughed, and they said, look, It says right here, there's nothing to worry about. It won't be here for another 50 years. Hey, guess what? That 50 years has came and gone. And this baby's out there in the sky. They've been watching it. I watched it. And I can tell you, this thing has got so much trash coming around it. You know how we live in a solar system? We've got 9 planets and a big sun. This thing has got 7 planets and its own sun. But I believe that instead of having dirt on it like our planet does and water, I think this thing is just a big, bright reddish-orange iron ball because it's giving off all this red iron oxide dust out into the atmosphere. When we saw it, at first, it was just a teeny little red speck of fuzzy red dust in the distance, but over the years as it went by and we watched it, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then finally, about 2008, we could see this thing like it was across the street. And we could see that it was a blazing hot ball of fire giving out sparkles of red iron oxide dust for thousands of miles in every direction. And you can see the planet circulating it. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I really am nervous about. I think this thing's got a planet like ours circling it. This is its own solar system. We're about to have a solar system come through the middle of our solar system. This can't be good. But unfortunately, it looks as though that's what's going to happen. Hopefully nothing in this mess will hit us, even though it does say it will in the Bible, at least as it does in my Bible. It says we can expect all kinds of problems. We were looking at asteroids. Right close to this thing, there's asteroids that are floating around right near that are orbiting the main sun itself. These things appear to be about 500 miles across. And as you go back into the tail, you get into meteorites that go back for millions of miles in the tail. This thing looks like a giant red teardrop-shaped dust cloud. And you can see, if you're able to see it up close like we did, you can see every speck out there. I guarantee you there's trillions of meteorites following this thing. Now, these CIA people that I know say that we're not going to be that close to it when it goes past us. They're saying that in order to attain breakaway speed, when it comes up around the backside of the sun, its speed will at least double, possibly more, which will put it here earlier than everybody is saying it will. And that this thing will probably be about 20 million miles from us when it crosses in front of us. And then as soon as it flips us upside down, we're going to go into its debris field tail and be pelted with meteorites. And of course in the Bible it says they will talon 70 pounds. So if you've got 70-pound meteorites falling like hail, and I can guarantee you they will be falling like hail because there are that many in the tail of this thing. This thing has got a tail loaded with trash. I mean, it's incredible the amount of stuff that's in this thing's tail. And we're going to go right through that tail, and if it doesn't beat everything on the surface of the ground into a flat putty, I don't know what it'll take. I tell everybody, you better be at least 20, 30, 40, 50 feet on the ground and have either concrete or stone above you because it'll break through the roof or whatever you've got if you don't. These CIA guys told me that this pole shift will probably happen from start to finish in around 28 minutes. That doesn't give you a lot of warning. When you see that thing out there in the sky, you're going to have to run as fast as you can to your underground facility because this is going to happen so fast. Now, see, here's another thing nobody's talking about. You've got this giant iron planet that they say is 47,000 miles across, getting ready to come up past us. And when it starts to approach us, it's going to start and have real serious effects.
So is it a planet or a failed star?
It's not a failed star. You know, I saw this thing up close. It did not look like a failed star. It looked just like our sun.
Right.
Okay? Would you call our sun a failed star?
No. Okay, well, you had said planet. I wasn't sure if it was like a failed star brown dwarf or a full sun. So it's a full sun?
It looks to me like a miniature sun, just like the one we have. The only difference is our sun is giving off flames and stuff, and this one's doing the same thing as it, but it's giving off this red iron oxide cloud of dust around it, and until it got close, we couldn't even tell what was in there. We could see it was hot, and it looked like it was just a dull red when we were first able to discern it through the red cloud, But as it approached, it started to become more apparent that this thing is just orange hot. I mean, to tell how hot it is, I was told that it was, they estimated between 5 and 10 million degrees, but, you know, I don't really know, if that's right or not. I mean, it's got to be pretty hot because it's sending all of this red iron oxide dust out into space around it.
Right.
And it's got this enormous, and I mean enormous, at least 50 or 100,000 miles on each side of it, this red dust cloud that goes all the way around it. I know when we were watching it, as it started to make the upward swing to approach behind our sun, it was amazing. The red dust cloud settled down. Instead of being round, it started to settle down into a V like wings, upside down wings.
Right.
And I thought, boy, I wonder if that's where the ancient Sumerians got the idea this thing had wings, because, you know, centrifugal force is a funny thing. When it comes back up around the planet, when we see it in the sky, my guess is it's going to look like it's got wings, because centrifugal force is going to be pulling the red iron oxide dust and particles out to one side, and then as it starts to climb out and go away from us, listen, I was told that this thing's magnetic field is going to be so strong, anybody that does not have a padded lead helmet to wear will have their brain gutted for everything they ever knew, and they'll be a complete raving moron after this thing passes. They'll lose they won't know, they'll pee in their pants. They won't have a clue what's going on, because this thing will gut their brain. And you know, I was reading a deal in my Bible. It says that after this happens, that nobody will care because they won't be able to remember it. Well, of course, I was told by somebody the reason that is because the electromagnetic field from this thing will be so strong, because, see, as it comes up underneath of us, it's going to start and pull us toward it. And then, just like a pair of big magnets, all of a sudden it's going to lock onto us. And when it does, it's going to be like the Jolly Green Giant hit the earth in the ass. It's going to send a jolt 500 to 1,000 foot high. This is what I'm told. 500 to 1,000 foot high shock waves all the way around planet Earth. They'll be so bad that in a lot of areas that don't have good solid soil, it'll fluff it so badly that you'll practically be like you're standing in quicksand. And that this thing's magnetic field will literally gut your brain of everything. And so you may want to give some thoughts to getting you some sheet lead, build you a little lead helmet to wear, you know, like a little motorcycle helmet to protect your entire brain and the back of your neck, so that way this can't happen. Because, you know, if these guys are right about this, and I'm pretty sure they are, because I know for a fact they know what they're talking about when they say stuff. And so, you know, and it does sound reasonable to me, knowing what I do about electromagnetic energy, that this could happen.
So what you're hearing, folks, is the interview with a CIA buddy that saw exactly what we're talking about, going way back. He looked through the Hubble telescope. He says, I saw, like it was across the street. So when you have first-hand eyewitness that says, I saw it, he's describing what he saw. Now we know, we can tell he's not an astronomer. He doesn't even say the word correctly. He's probably not that educated in any of the field of science when it comes to this. But he was lucky enough to have a buddy that was there. He could take a glance into the Hubble telescope and see something that probably scared the bedoodles out of him. And they were looking at this thing back in the day when it wasn't being covered up, because they felt there was enough time. There was enough time to prepare down the road. It wasn't an immediate risk. So no big government cover-up yet. But then once somebody got a hold of it and said, listen, we can't let this cat out of the bag, because it might not seem dangerous today, but there'll be enough people making some waves, pardon the pun, that's going to cause some controversy and some conspiracy theories start running wild. So obviously it got covered up for a while, and then probably about the mid-70s, early 80s is when it resurfaced again. So here we are, folks, in 2017, 50 years later, after this insider has given his account of what he saw with the Hubble telescope back in the 60s. So we know the government has known about this for a long time. They have covered this up. And we have steadily uncovered the information, whether it be the U.S. Navy flood map to all the information about Nibiru, Nemesis, and its planets in the solar system that's coming through our solar system. The data has been there. We have painstakingly have uncovered it, and with the advent of the internet, the computer, and the social media, we have been able to pass this information along to one another very quickly. And so we know that the effects of what's happening with this solar system passing through us from history of recorded events is real. There's very biblical foundational proof that's happened in the past, whether it be pole shift of the Earth flipping on its axis, the flooding and the tsunamis that come along with that, the melting of the polar caps, the sea level rise, the tsunamis, the earthquakes, the shaking, the Earth crust breaking apart, all has been recorded, and we have been projecting the effects coming soon. The size of this Nemesis system in comparison to the Earth is staggering. Thus why the government has covered this up for all these years. Executive orders written to protect the American people from the truth. And rightly so, because we know how difficult it would be to evacuate 70 million people off the coastlines. And the government has done that too. They realize the pitfalls in regard to moving this many people to safety. But for those of us that do watch these videos and research ourselves, to find the proof in the photos of the coming Nibiru and Nemesis system, the collection of these 7 planets that are in our solar system affecting us now, will continue to increase. By the time we see it in the sky with the effects coming in, that will be too late. Our time is now to begin acting on these gut feelings and research and data that we have put together, these collective ability of seeing these things before we start seeing the tsunamis flood into the coastlines. Because when this pole shift alignment happens, when the Nibiru and Nemesis and the other planets and moons come in proximity to this Earth, it will happen so quickly we will not have time to do anything. The commentator in this video that gave his account said that this pole shift will happen in approximately 30 minutes. So this effect of the oceans and sea level rise will happen very rapidly. We see the asteroid shower, meteor shower, happening on August 12th. We have a solar eclipse coming on August 21st. We have the September 23rd alignment of all the planets and stars, according to prophecy in Revelation 12. This year, September 23rd, 2017. It's no coincidence that this alignment of the celestial sign, the harbinger warning of the events coming, that it coincides with all these other things that we've been researching for these past several years. So the time is now, folks, to make the move, know exactly where and what you're going to do with the like-minded people within your group. This is not something that we can just overlook. The government has spent decades preparing for this. Many of us have spent at least 5 to 7 to 10 years researching all this. We have seen the proof of the theories by watching the sunsets and sunrises across the globe at different time intervals and different locations, from South America to the UK to Halifax, Nova Scotia, up north. We have seen photos like this. We just don't have two suns appearing because it looks pretty. There's a major reason why we're seeing this. So for those who have done the research and have the gut and instinctive feeling inside to say it's time, I employ all of you to pray, be led by your spirit, share with others, and make a move. Act on what you're seeing and feeling and make it happen now, before it's too late. Because when we see it in the sky, it is too late. We'll see you on the other side, folks. Have a great night.
However, before my research, if you would have asked me then if I think there is really a planet X, I would have said no. But if you ask me now, my answer will be yes. I believe there is a Nibiru in our solar system. Let me show you why. Originally, I didn't see how a huge planet, 4 times the size of Jupiter, can exist in our solar system without us knowing. But that is before I learned about TNO. Before I did extensive research on ancient prophecies, which, believe it or not, collaborated somehow. Let me put it this way. You may not recognize Nibiru when it comes, and the visit may be different from what you expected, but believe me, there is a Nibiru out there in our solar system. For people who are new to this Planet X Nibiru theory, let me give you a quick tour. According to the ancient Sumerians, the 10th planet Nibiru is on a highly elliptic 3,600-year orbit. It is called the Destroyer Planet, as when it comes, it will bring destruction and possibly the Doomsday. Wait, if Doomsday comes every 3,600 years, how come we're still here? Think about it this way. Many comets pass by our sun regularly. How many of them hit planets? The last and only one I remember was the Shoemaker-Levy 9 hitting Jupiter in July 1994. So maybe Nibiru's last flyby was harmless last time. But we may not be likely so lucky next time? Before jumping to any conclusions we cannot sustain, let me bring you another popular Nibiru theory. The planet Nibiru of Nemesis. Nemesis is supposedly our sun's brown dwarf twin. The theory was first introduced in 1984, largely based on the Earth's mass extension 26 million year cycle. An evil twin 1.5 light years away, hidden beyond the Oort cloud, would be a perfect suspect. If Nibiru is a planet of Nemesis, it could explain how its occupants survived 3,600 years without a sun. Nemesis is Nibiru's travel companion and its portable generator. When the theory was introduced in 1984, it made great sense, and at that time, scientists believed that most stars are binary. Obviously, our sun should not be an exception. However, scientists have determined that mass extinction happens more like every 50 million years and two mass astronomical surveys, which ran from 1997 to 2001, failed to detect any brown dwarf in our solar system. While in 2011, NASA's David Morrison, who specializes in near-Earth objects, concluded that even with infrared telescopes able to detect brown dwarfs as far away as 10 light-years, failed to find Nemesis. It is most likely that Nemesis does not exist. Of course, that is if you believe to do if they think the world will end tomorrow. Obviously, telling you will not be on the top of the list. They will build a bunker and plan shelters for people that may survive the doomsday Earth. And to avoid chaos, it is wise not to share the doomsday news with anyone. Plus, who can know for certain what will happen, right? If you think the government will always do the right thing, let me tell you what Nostradamus thought about that. Will be struck from the sky. One who cannot proceed any further. The secret closed up with the revelation, such that they will march over and ahead. If you have any doubts about Nostradamus' prophecies, check out some of my Nostradamus videos. When I compared his quatrains with historical events, I was shocked to find the unbelievable details revealed. Check out any of my videos and you will be surprised. This quatrain is grouped with 20 other doomsday quatrains in the second part of the Book of Prophecy, which I call the Doomsday Century. This quatrain seems to indicate that our government would get warnings from the sky, which can be divine, or from aliens. The message warns us, do not proceed. It is a secret that will be kept from most of us. But the warnings were probably ignored, as the last sentence stated, quote, such that they will march over and ahead. Whatever the secret may be, it will be ignored, and we, mankind, will eventually face the consequences. So, if Nemesis does not exist and Nibiru is only a theory, why should we waste any more time talking about it? Actually, I think Nibiru does exist. It may be different from the mythical planet where Anunnaki reside, but it is there. Let me show you the proof about Nibiru's existence. Consider this. If you think the theory about Nibiru's 3,600-year orbit around the Sun is crazy, did you know Mars orbits the Sun every 687 days, but is already considered outside the Goldilocks zone that could harbor lives? What is the chance of life on Nibiru if Nibiru does exist? Plus, what is the chance of having a planet having a 3,600-year orbit? On the planet Eris, what you see is that it is called the most, means that we really don't know what we're talking about. Pluto and Eris both are known dwarf planets, and Tino, the so-called trans-Neptunian objects, those are minor planets with highly elliptical orbits. And if you search Wikipedia for trans-Neptunian object, a section called Putative Trans-Neptunian Objects of Planetary Size will jump out at you. It states, the existence of trans-Neptunian rock ice bodies of planetary size, ranging from less than Earth mass up to a brown dwarf, has been often postulated. For different theoretical reasons to explain several observed or speculated features of the Kuiper Belt or the Oort cloud. It was recently proposed to use ranging data from the New Horizons spacecraft to constrain the position of such a hypothesized body. Putative means generally considered or reputed to be. Doesn't this sound like an endorsement from Wikipedia? I guess Nibiru is not all BS after all. Another reason I believe planet Nibiru is real is based on what scientists found in 2003. Sedna is a red dwarf planet 86 astronomical units away from the Sun, which is about 3 times as far as Neptune. Its discovery helped push poor Pluto off the planetary lineup. But what is important to know is its crazy orbit. It's aphelion, which is the closest distance from the Sun, is 76 AU, but its perihelion is 936 AU, and it takes 11,400 years to complete an orbit. During its 11,400-year journey around the Sun, we can only get a glance when it is near us. So, can you imagine how many more planets we have not seen? Can you imagine how big the others may be? Sedna's discovery proves Nibiru is not a myth. And then we found in 2014 FE72. It is another trans-Neptunian object, but this one has an orbit period of 90,000 years, with a perihelion of 36.3 AU and an aphelion of 4,000 AU. This really pushes our solar system. Why would life choose to grow on a planet so far away from the Sun? Well, I guess we don't get to pick our birthplace, right? We have to adapt to our environment, correct? Plus, life may have started on a beautiful, friendly planet till the planet changed. For that, I will share with you another story we are all quite familiar with, the Shoemaker-Levy 9. Did you know before Shoemaker-Levy 9's impact with Jupiter, it was not orbiting the Sun? That is a fact few people know. Time changed the comet's path and destiny. So, an advanced civilization may have been flourishing on Nibiru before the planet changed its course. Or maybe Nibiru was pulled away by another star. Maybe it is our Sun's binary twin. Its advanced technology made it possible to cope with whatever harsh environment, and its residents refused to leave home. Scientists feel the chance of our Sun having a twin star is slim. But what gravity forces keep these minor planets circling our Sun and something else on these elliptical orbits? There must be another massive body on the other end. Remember, we can only see them when they are close to us. Can you imagine how many more are out there that we have not seen? If the Earth has survived till today, why should we worry? Even if there are 1 million Nibirus out there, they probably won't come closer than Pluto, right? That may be right, but since we know so little, we have to rely on people who know more, and that is the problem. We have found so many new planets and new stars. Who will know?
back in the 1950s, most people aren't aware of it, but there was a scientific storm in America all through the late 50s about this thing out there in space, because the astronomers were all watching it, and that was back when they weren't afraid to talk about it. It was in the science magazines. I mean, I had a subscription to, like, Popular Science, and hell, it was on the front cover of the magazine one day in, like, 1961. And I was really excited when I saw it, because here's this giant red planet on the horizon of the California coast, and a humongous tidal wave coming in towards the coast, and having grew up in the mountains of the Sierras, and this thing in the magazine, it said this tidal wave coming in was going to be at least 3 miles high, and I went in and showed it to everybody in the house, and they laughed, and they said, you know, we live in a solar system. We've got 9 planets and a big sun. This thing has got 7 planets and its own sun. I think this one is just a big, bright, reddish-orange iron ball because it's giving off all this red iron oxide dust out into the atmosphere. At first, it was just a teeny little red speck of fuzzy red dust in the distance, but over the years, as it went by and we watched it, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then finally, about 2008, we could see this thing like it was across the street, and we could see that it was a blazing hot ball of fire giving out sparkles of red iron oxide dust for thousands of miles in every direction. And you could see the planet circulating it. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I really am nervous about. I think this thing's got a planet like ours circling it. This is its own solar system. We're about to have a solar system come through the middle of our solar system. This can't be good. But unfortunately, it looks as though that's what's going to happen. Hopefully nothing in this mess will hit us, even though it does say it will in the Bible, leastwise it does in my Bible. It says we can expect all kinds of problems. We were looking at asteroids. Right close to this thing, there's asteroids that are floating around right near that are orbiting the main sun itself. These things appear to be about 500 miles across. And as you go back into the tail, you get into meteorites that go back for millions of miles in the tail. This thing looks like a giant red teardrop-shaped dust cloud. And you can see, once if you're able to see it up close like we did, you can see every speck out there. I guarantee you there's trillions of meteorites following this thing. Now, these CIA people that I know say that we're not going to be that close to it when it goes past us. They're saying that in order to attain breakaway speed, when it comes up around the backside of the sun, its speed will at least double, possibly more, which will put it here earlier than everybody is saying it will, and that this thing will probably be about 20 million miles from us when it crosses in front of us. And then as soon as it flips us upside down, we're going to go into its debris field tail and be pelted with meteorites. And, of course, in the Bible it says they will, at Talon, 70 pounds. So if you've got 70-pound meteorites falling like hail, and I can guarantee you they will be falling like hail because there are that many in the tail of this thing. This thing has got a tail loaded with trash. I mean, it's incredible the amount of stuff that's in this thing's tail. And we're going to go right through that tail, and if it doesn't beat everything on the surface of the ground into a flat putty, I don't know what it'll take. I tell everybody, you better be at least 20, 30, 40, 50 feet on the ground and have either concrete or stone above you, because it'll break through the roof or whatever you've got if you don't. These CIA guys told me that this pole shift will probably happen from start to finish in around 28 minutes. That doesn't give you a lot of warning. When you see that thing out there in the sky, you're going to have to run as fast as you can to your underground facility, because this is going to happen so fast. Now, see, here's another thing nobody's talking about. You've got this giant iron planet that they say is 47,000 miles across, getting ready to come up past us, and when it starts to approach us, it's going to start and have real serious effects.
So is it a planet or a failed star?
It's not a failed star. You know, I saw this thing up close. It did not look like a failed star. It looked just like our sun.
Right.
Okay. Would you call our sun a failed star?
No. Okay. Well, you had said planet. I wasn't sure if it was like a failed star brown dwarf or a full sun. So it's a full sun?
It looks to me like a miniature sun, just like the one we have. The only difference is our sun is giving off flames and stuff, and this one's doing the same thing as it, but it's giving off this apparent that this thing is just orange hot. I mean, to tell how hot it is, I was told that they estimated between 5 and 10 million degrees, but, you know, I don't really know, if that's right or not. I mean, it's got to be pretty hot because it's sending all of this red iron oxide dust out into space around it.
Right.
And it's got this enormous, and I mean enormous, at least 50 or 100,000 miles on each side of it, this red dust cloud that goes all the way around it. I know when we were watching it, as it started to make the upward swing to approach behind our sun, it was amazing. The red dust cloud settled down. Instead of being round, it started to settle down into a V, like wings, upside-down wings.
Right.
And I thought, boy, I wonder if that's where the ancient Sumerians got the idea this thing had wings, because, you know, centrifugal force is a funny thing. When it comes back up around the planet, when we see it in the sky, my guess is it's going to look like it's got wings, because centrifugal force is going to be pulling the red iron oxide dust and particles out to one side, and then as it starts to climb out and go away from us, listen, I was told that this thing's magnetic field is going to be so strong, anybody that does not have a padded lead helmet to wear will have their brain gutted for everything they ever knew, and they'll be a complete raving moron after this thing passes. They'll they won't know, they'll pee in their pants. They won't have a clue what's going on, because this thing will gut their brain. And you know, I was reading a deal in my Bible. It says that after this happens, that nobody will care because they won't be able to remember it. Well, of course, I was told by somebody the reason that is because the electromagnetic field from this thing will be so strong, because, see, as it comes up underneath of us, it's going to start and pull us toward it. And then, just like a pair of big magnets, all of a sudden it's going to lock onto us. And when it does, it's going to be like the Jolly Green Giant kicked the earth in the ass. It's going to send a jolt 500 to 1,000 foot high. This is what I'm told. 500 to 1,000 foot high shock waves all the way around planet Earth. They'll be so bad that in a lot of areas that don't have good solid soil, it'll fluff it so badly that you'll practically be like you're standing in quicksand. And that this thing's magnetic field will literally gut your brain of everything. And so you may want to give some thoughts to getting you some sheet lead, build you a little lead helmet to wear, you know, like a little motorcycle helmet to protect your entire brain and the back of your neck, so that way this can't happen. Because, you know, if these guys are right about this, and I'm pretty sure they are, because I know for a fact they know what they're talking about when they say stuff. And so, you know, and it does sound reasonable to me, knowing what I do about electromagnetic energy, that this could happen. And it very easily could gut everybody's brain for everything they ever knew, and they'll stand there and pee in their pants and go, gee, what was that? And that's if they still know how to talk. And there won't be any doubt in anybody's mind, because this thing's going to look like a big red dragon, exactly like all the ancient Sumerians and the Chinese and all the rest of them that had documented this thing's passing before. It didn't look like a white ball or a snow cloud or nothing. It looked like a big red iron oxide dust cloud with a superheated star in the middle of it. And, I mean, you know, and that's what we've seen. So, you know, I don't care what anybody else says. There's a possibility. There's more than one thing out there. You know, I watched it through the Hubble Space Telescope, and when this thing looked like it was across the street, the Hubble got cut off, and they encrypted it, and that was the end of any transmissions we had to watch. And we know that the Hubble, in order to be in the shadow of the Earth, had to be at an angle, and so that meant it was looking downward, and this thing was coming up underneath of us. And I tell you the honest to God truth, I personally think this thing is real close to us right now, but you know, that's just my general feeling that you know, and I'm a pretty psychic guy. I have the feeling that this thing is right close by and that we're going to see it any time. I mean, I've been doing everything I could do to get prepared for it. I'm really worried about what Jesus says. You know, when the fig tree is putting on its leaves, know that summer is near, and I'm at your door. And that worries me more than probably anything I've read in the Bible about this whole thing, the parable of the fig tree, because everything seems to be in place for this thing's arrival. And the bad thing is, he says, I'm going to come like a thief in the night. Well, it does also say in the Bible that I'm going to make the sun go down at noontime in Jerusalem. Okay, if that's the case, there's only one thing that'll make the sun go down, not hit the horizon, go down at noontime, and that's if the planet experiences a pole shift.
Okay, I got a quick question that you could probably answer really quickly and then continue from the chat room. Wants to know if you're talking about Planet X or Elenin, and I don't think, I've never thought Elenin is Planet X. Cheryl's pretty stuck on that, but I think Elenin, as a result of it, it's a comet that's been kicked in.
Elenin is extinction level event Nibiru is near.
Right.
Does that explain it?
Yeah.
Okay, because listen, they've known about this thing forever. And I mean, they've known about it forever. I mean, if I read about it in a science magazine in 1961, that tells you that, I mean, it's only 1,800 years away. How could they not be able to see it when it came around the backside of the last sun and headed this way?
Right.
You have to know they've been watching it, because if you know, Carl Sagan was showing stuff that they took with their old telescopes that was billions and billions of miles away, and this thing's only 1,800 years away. Well, and by 1930 it was only 70 years away. You know, we do estimate that this thing, let me give you a thing, maybe you can figure out your own timeline. We estimated that this thing is traveling around 3,500 miles an hour, okay?
Okay.
That was our estimate of its speed. Now, it has been picking up speed, and that's the reason why we think it's going to arrive early, because when it comes around the backside of the sun, it's got to double that speed in order to attain breakaway speed to leave the sun and not wind up orbiting it. It's never orbited the sun in the past that we know of, so that means that it's going to have to attain breakaway speed to head back out into space. Now, you look at the NASA videos, photos, and all this other crap those morons put on the internet. This thing is coming in. It's going to, as soon as it goes around the top of the sun, it's going to go back out into space.
Right.
And it's going to do this really fast. When it goes past us, it's going to go past us so fast that we'll almost have no time to get ready. That's my opinion. But, you know, just drawing it out on paper a few times and thinking about it, and I went, you know, if this thing picks up enough speed to make breakaway speed, then that means it's going to come past us. You know, this thing, according to what I was told, is that this thing is approximately 47,000 miles in diameter, you know, 4 or 5 times the size of the Earth, and it'll come past us, and we won't have a lot of warning, and we won't get to see it in the sky until it's on us. I think the NASA timeline is completely off. I think this thing is going to arrive much earlier than they say it is. You know, I know they're saying October, but, you know, if you look at the, you know, now, I was told that the poles are not shifting at 42 miles a year. They're shifting at 42 miles a day. And the reason is because this planet is rolling over to face this thing. Now, when it goes by, it's not going to push our North Pole away. It's going to grab our southern pole with its northern pole, and it's going to be like somebody kicked this planet in the ass. That earthquake that it talks about in Revelations, when the opening of the sixth seal comes, from what I've been told, that's very accurate, because that's exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be a massive earthquake when it locks onto us. As it goes past us, we're going to follow it right upside down. The oceans are just going to be roaring from pole to pole, as you could well guess they would, because if you take a planet that's 7,000 miles across and roll it upside down in 30 minutes, you're going to have some...
Let's go to Chris in North Carolina. You're on the air. Welcome. Yes, sirs. This question's for Dan or Steve Quill. Sorry, I was about to say Dan Quill. That's weird.
It's okay. Dan Quell's. Go ahead.
My question is, do you think the government already knows about an impending doom from Islamic terrorists in the Jade Helm area? Do you think that's going to implement martial law?
Well, I think it's going to be one of the things that springboards us into martial law. And, you can't say ISIS an open border with any type of intellectual or emotional or moral integrity. Why have the borders not been secured? Alex has had people on. I've talked to them, interviewed them, read their emails on the air. They're basically saying if we arrest anybody who's a known terrorist, and I'm not talking about Latinos or Hispanics, they're talking about someone comes in from the State Department and orders them let go. So the point is absolutely ISIS. Here's the point in terror. Terror is ultimately to bring about submission, and that's what they're trying to do. We see it in the politics of radical Islam in the United States. We see it all through the Middle East. And the point is we could have stopped this. And if anybody remembers, Alex, remember the long victory parade, 4.5 miles long, of ISIS and their captured U.S. stuff in Iraq? And
yes.
And people were saying, why didn't we hit them then? Well, simply because the powers that be in this country, deep down, they are Satanists, and they're going to use everybody. It goes right back to Albert Pike's statement, turn the Muslims against the Jews, Jews against Christians, and when everybody wipes out everybody, we bring on Lucifer, the true God. And I'm not going to argue with anybody. That's immoral.
Well, sure, that's what they're doing. And then people say, Alex, you're the guy that exposed false flag terror on 9/11. Why are you saying ISIS is real? They have raised this al-Qaeda jihadi army. They've changed the name to ISIS and Islamic State to confuse the public. I think Colonel Schaefer on, you name it, the Pentagon knows 90+% of the Free Syrian Army is al-Qaeda, is ISIS. And so our government's funding them. They let them come in. They let them attack. No need to even stage an event now because the upstream, they created them, allowed them to operate through Saudi funding, through NATO funding. Then they can take our liberties in the response to ISIS. And ISIS, in return, is given part of the Middle East as their payoff for being the secret army that destabilizes the West so a police state can be put in place. And that's the bottom line of what's happening. Separately, though, it just shows what a farce Homeland Security is because they say their main mission is who? Those of us that don't want to go along with the New World Order. Thank you, Chris. Let's talk to Michael in Mississippi. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex. Hey, Steve. Steve, I had a question. I've listened to several interviews with Bob Fletcher, including the one you did on the Hagman show. And Bob Fletcher's pretty much put his investigative credibility and reputation on the line about an incoming celestial event that he believes martial law must be established or set in place.
That's right. A lot of folks think there's a asteroid coming in or something. What do you know about that?
Well, years ago I talked specifically about Nibiru. That's the official ancient name, the 10th planet.
Planet X.
Planet X, Gabriel's fist, Lucifer's hammer, and based on what a Navy SEAL, I posted on my alert site, Navy SEAL explains a big event as being that, okay? In other words, Alex, they know of all the earth changes that are going to be happening, they know of all of the electrical discharges, they know of Roche's, R-O-C-H-E's limit, and the point is that the whole universe, if you want to look at it real simply, is go and look up Velikovsky, Worlds in Collision, and then the time of this is interesting because we've heard, both of us from separate sources, that they're stocking their underground.
Well, sure. And how many record blood moons have there been?
Well, what is it? 3? The 4th is coming up.
I mean, I don't even put stake in all this, but the elites do. They're obsessed with it all. Final segment of the main radio broadcast. We're in a little 5-minute overdrive that's internet only. Infowars.com/show. Well, some stations carry the 4th hour, so that's not quite true. I want to thank all of our affiliates out there. Be sure and support them. Be sure and support the sponsors. Spread the word. Some of the stories up on Infowars.com. Explosive new documents reveal Obama Clinton spin and lies on Benghazi. Al Gore's climate change lies exposed. The latest on that. Now he says in a few more years we'll be all flooded and dead, basically. Of course, he said in 2007 it would be by 2013. Leftists exploit biker bloodbaths to complain about white privilege. They say, why isn't the National Guard out on the street? Because they arrested everybody. It happened in a localized area. It isn't just random people going out and burning stuff. It was a outlaw motorcycle gang impromptu rally. And the whole thing's very suspicious. Now they got a giant rot rally coming up in Austin, Texas, and who knows what's going to happen with that. Most of the bike riders are great people. I don't care if you want to wear an outfit and be part of a club. Talking about the criminal groups claim they're anti-establishment, but all I see is them working with the establishment, with their drug dealing and all the rest of it. Going back to Steve Quayle, we're taking phone calls. Steve, what do you think is really going on with this? I mean, you say you have some questions about it. Why does everything keep popping up in Texas?
Well, I think that Texas, number one, has one of the strongest real-based economies in the world without massive amounts of debt. Number two, it's the spirit of the Alamo. Number three, it basically is because if that secret agreement that is in place, that I've been told that you've been affirmed that it is too, to return Aztlan to Mexico, then obviously the greatest resistance is going to come from Texas. Texas has a history, and by the way, wasn't there a TV series out or HBO special called The Sons of Texas? I think there was or something, or is coming out, and I thought that was very prophetic in its timing. So it's because of the border, it's because of the strength of the people, it's because you're obviously a God-fearing state historically, with minor exceptions in some of the politics, and the idea of all of the assets that are available in Texas, meaning they are.
Oh, it's definitely its own standalone country, and the U.S. surpassed a year ago Saudi Arabia in global production. That's mainly Texas is the biggest oil producer in the world. It has its own infrastructure. They look at the demographics, and they know politically Texas is not going to say yes to the New World Order, and so Jade Helm is a dry run. We're not demonizing the military. It's there to condition them as well. Rich in Ohio, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, Alex and Steve.
Welcome.
What a combination. It's great to talk to both of you guys at the same time. You guys are excellent. I watch your videos and, I connect the dots.
Thank you, brother.
You're both skirting around the big dots. You both see it, but you don't see it.
Well, hey, you're on the air. No, don't need to preface it. Got a minute?
And then look at Richard Shaw's new production on the Torah codes. And these are the two biggest dots that are interconnected that you're missing.
You know, I've been on the air for 20 years, and I'm always hearing about Planet X. I know there's a Kuiper belt, there's an asteroid belt. I know we get struck by big objects. I know it's real, but people are always saying it's coming in 2-3 years, and it just becomes this all-encompassing thing. I know governments are dug in. 4 big collisions, comets, you name that. I mean, so I know that's a real threat. Yellowstone, supervolcano, all of it. But to just say it's this and it's going to happen, I don't think we can say that. Steve Quayle?
I agree with you, Alex. I hear about Yellowstone's going to blow any minute. I fly down there almost weekly sometimes. I mean, I'm down there. It's not ready to blow. The bottom line is it doesn't do you good to worry about Planet X if you're going to get wiped out, in August, September, should Jade Helm go active. The timing is always the issue.
Stay there, Steve. Back in 70 seconds. I want you to finish up. SteveQuayle.com, AlexJones, Infowars.com. Nightly News Tonight, 7. The over-the-top nature of reality is why so many people just can't wake up, because it is legendary, epic, what's happening. And let's say we're exaggerating, and half of it's true. It's still over-the-top insane. And unfortunately, I think it's probably worse than we're saying in many respects. The elite have gone insane like Caligula. I want to go to Max, Mike, and others here in just a moment. And I want to give final comment real quick after that to Steve Quayle. I really appreciate riding shotgun with us today. Max has a question for Steve Quayle on weather weapons. Go ahead.
Hi, Alex Jones and Quayle Man. I was wondering with the weather weapons they use, electrofrequency, magnetism, microwaves, and also chemicals, do those interfere also with, I naturally assume so, the human body and mind, and also a further extension of MK Ultra?
Are you asking me if it can affect the human mind?
If they're also used to affect the human mind, yes.
Thank you, Max.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm sorry, Alex. His phone broke up or something. I could barely hear.
Yeah, that's why I let him go. His phone went bad. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many studies. You can go on the internet, electronic mind control. Also, it's possible to produce heart attacks. I mean, they have electromagnetic weapons, and I believe that's what they used on Breitbart when they killed him within 5 or 10 minutes after National Defense Authorization Act, 1867 was in place. Andrew Breitbart was dead.
What about Michael Hastings and blowing his car up? I mean, they really are killing people.
Yeah, for a certainty, and I've done my homework, Alec. It's just on Weather Wars. People say, well, they can't do that. I'm just telling you, they can, and when I've spent, I'm looking at my, 400, 500 footnotes, whatever there is, the point is yes, they can, yes, they are, and yes, they will.
We're not in Kansas anymore, as I say every day. I mean, we are in a futuristic weirdo land, and the public still thinks we're back in 1950. We're not. Let's talk to, let's go ahead and talk to Drew in Missouri. You're on the air with Steve Quayle. Go ahead.
Yeah, man, great talking to you two. Real quick, my question is, I got 2 small kids, and I want to be prepared for this upcoming Civil War. What are the 3, maybe 3 top things you suggest a guy should do? I got a farm, I can prepare and self-sustain. What do you suggest, like guns and ammo, silver and gold, stockpile food and water?
Yeah, by the way, they've been holding gold down. It's starting to go back up. Steve Quayle, what would you do, the top things to get ready for the unraveling of society, which we know is coming? The only question is when.
Right. Well, this is going to sound extreme, but at the time, when I say extreme, at some point, all of us have to throw our smartphones away, okay? That's true. That's a radio tracking beacon.
Oh, yeah, they track you everywhere you go with it.
Yeah, but the number one, food first. What I'm telling everybody, Alex, food prices are going to rise. Food will be available, but at nothing near recognizable prices. So no matter what a budget is, I know the farmer has got food and stuff stored up. You have to have a form of self-defense. You must absolutely, and be familiar with it. I'm sorry, a father is charged biblically to protect his family. And Alex, you've gone on record, I've gone on record, there's nobody, as long as we're alive and God gives us grace and breath, that are going to harm the...
That's right, and it's not we're looking for violence. You've just got to be ready to kill for your family and already be preset that you're not going to think about it when the time comes, or you'll be dead.
Absolutely. The other thing you've got to think about is having a secondary location. Everybody needs a back door. By back door, if you have land, sir, make sure that you have other areas on your land beside the home. The point is that, you've got to get a realistic working knowledge of the things that disappear first, and you want to be where everyone else isn't when the cash, are killing cash. So the only way people outside of the system who won't take the mark of the beast will be able to do any type of commerce is with gold and silver. There's an attack on that. They've kept it down. It's getting ready to move, and we're watching that in the last 3 days.
That's right. I want to have you up very soon, if you can do it, Steve, to break down, because you're a top prepper, one of the main founding guys. You never talk about that, about just the war on individualism, on cash, on farming, on the family.
Have a shot in my mouth, please.
There are increasing indications that Planet X, also known as Nibiru, is moving in a precise direction towards planet Earth. So what does this suggest for those of us who dwell on this planet? Is there actually a biblical link that correlates with the end times as we know it? Many of you believe that NASA and other government bodies, such as the Pentagon and the CIA, are aware of its approach. Your belief carries considerable weight, considering the recent publication of scientific studies claiming that there is proof of an unnamed mysterious planet lurking beyond Pluto. The claim was determined by observations of gravitational influences on a group of celestial bodies called the extreme trans-Neptunian objects, which are orbiting our Sun beyond Neptune. The approach of the mysterious planet Nibiru is at present sending waves of charged plasmatic energy particles through our solar system. The flow of energy will finally affect the core flows of the Earth and result in catastrophic changes in Earth's climate, which is without a doubt occurring on an escalated scale. Planet Earth has been feeling the effects of this inbound planet or system of planets since 1996, with records showing a troublesome increase in seismic and volcanic activity, extreme weather patterns, and catastrophic disasters. U.S. and Russian governments are aware of its approach, as is the Vatican hierarchy, which is keeping a watchful eye on the heavens with their sophisticated telescope perched high in the mountains of Arizona. In the meantime, the public is being kept in the dark regarding this approaching apocalypse. The consensus by many is that such an event would annihilate 2/3 of the world's population, while 2/3 of those who survive the initial impact will perish over time due to starvation and exposure to the elements. The question that persists with respect to Planet X is whether this mysterious planet that scientists now claim exists beyond Pluto is the same planet that is believed to have wiped out much of humanity thousands of years ago. There is, however, more to this story than what meets the eye. Based on the research study known as extreme trans-Neptunian objects and the Kazai mechanism, signaling the presence of trans-Plutonian planets, posted in 2014 in the Journal Monthly Notices of the Royal Astronomical Society letters, there are at least 2 planets, part of our solar system, larger than Earth, lurking out there beyond Pluto, and whose existence can be noticed through their gravitational influences. So it is fair to say that NASA understands that these planetary objects are a serious threat to our civilization. It is widely perceived that researchers had proposed that the so-called Planet X was at least 10 times as large as Earth and was most likely situated at a distance of 250 astronomical units from our Sun, with an orbit of 10 to 20,000 years. There is an understanding that an approaching large body or a star system of planets and moons can trigger considerable differences in magnetic activity, and recent data from our magnetosphere indicates that this is what is now taking place. There were even suggestions that Google Sky had revealed an area in space that had been censored by NASA, showing the winged globe moving through our solar system. So are these subtle warnings an earnest attempt to inform us that an apocalyptic situation is at hand, which is coming from out of this world, something previously unknown to humanity, but which have memories in our subconscious from past lives and records kept over the ages? If we consider the ancient era of Atlantis and Lemuria and what happened to these civilizations, is it any wonder that NASA would redact the location of this incoming body on Google Sky or in their own imagery? Every week, NASA appears to have learned something new that was unimaginable, and yet they want us to imagine that Planet X Nibiru is unreal. As you can envision, the gravitational consequences of a sizable planet moving close to the inner solar system would spell huge problems for planet Earth. Not only are we witnessing climate extremes and a shifting of the Earth, but we are now bearing witness to the very real observations that the four seasons, as we have known them, are now blending. So with all of this in mind, we can now ascertain why certain governments are taking steps to protect their own interests as they prepare for the arrival and the aftermath of this large planetary body or system of planets moving through our solar system. Here is some news that has been widely reported, but which some of you may not be aware of. Russia recently completed building or updating some 5,000 shelters in Moscow. They actually have been quite open about what they are doing, but they haven't specifically stated the actual reason for constructing or updating these shelters. But we do know that they have some facilities that can accommodate up to 100,000 people. The United States is estimated to have over 150 deep underground military bases. Coincidentally, a huge military underground city exists below the Denver airport. Now, these are entire underground cities that have been under construction since the 1980s. But this is a need-to-know classification that is underway and is never published in advance for fear of destabilizing the economy. If you do any research of this topic, you are bound to run into various forms of disinformation. Now, some of it intentional, but much of it produced by uneducated individuals within the public. Until the discovery of Planet X, astronomers had regarded the writings of the ancient Sumerians about this object as legend. When Planet X was discovered in 1983, they suddenly learned that the Sumerians were not the primitive people they had been made out to be by intellectuals of today. Have you ever wondered what the real purpose of the Hubble Space Telescope was intended for? It was not to explore the universe and the solar system, as some have suggested. Rather, the reason for constructing this multi-billion-dollar telescope and then placing it in orbit was for the purpose of observing the inbound Planet X. A June 6th interview with a Hubble insider states this fact as to the Hubble's purpose. He watched this mysterious body through the Hubble telescope and stated that this thing looked as if it was nearby. And the Hubble got cut off, and they encrypted it, and that was the end of any transmission. So let's listen to this interview.
Back in the 1950s, most people aren't aware of it, but there was a scientific storm in America all through the late 50s about this thing out there in space because the astronomers were all watching it, and that was back when they weren't afraid to talk about it. It was in the science magazines. I mean, I had a subscription to, like, Popular Science, and hell, it was on the front cover of the magazine one day in, like, 1961. And I was really excited when I saw it because here's this giant red planet on the horizon of the California coast and a humongous tidal wave coming in towards the coast. And having grew up in the mountains of the Sierras, and this thing in the magazine, it said this tidal wave coming in was going to be at least 3 miles high. And I went in and showed it to everybody in the house, and they laughed and they said, "Look, It says right here, there's nothing to worry about. It won't be here for another 50 years. Hey, guess what? That 50 years has came and gone. And this baby's out there in the sky. They've been watching it. I watched it. And I can tell you, this thing has got so much trash coming around it. You know how we live in a solar system? We've got 9 planets and a big sun. This thing has got 7 planets and its own sun. The years as it went by and we watched it, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then finally, about 2008, we could see this thing like it was across the street. And we could see that it was a blazing hot ball of fire giving out sparkles of red iron oxide dust for thousands of miles in every direction. And you could see the planet circulating it. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I really am nervous about. I think this thing's got a planet like ours circling it. This is its own solar system. We're about to have a solar system come through the middle of our solar system. This can't be good. But unfortunately, it looks as though that's what's going to happen. We were looking at asteroids right close to this thing. There's asteroids that are floating around right near that are orbiting the main sun itself. These things appear to be about 500 miles across. This thing looks like a giant red teardrop-shaped dust cloud, and you can see once if you're able to see it up close like we did, you can see every speck out there. Now, these CIA people that I know say that we're not going to be that close to it when it goes past us. They're saying that in order to attain breakaway speed, when it comes up around the backside of the sun, its speed will at least double, possibly more, which will put it here earlier than everybody is saying it will, and that this thing will probably be about 20 million miles from us when it crosses in front of us. And then as soon as it flips us upside down, we're going to go into its debris field. These CIA guys told me that this pole shift will probably happen from start to finish in around 28 minutes. That doesn't give you a lot of warning. When you see that thing out there in the sky, you're going to have to run as fast as you can to your underground facility, because this is going to happen so fast. Now, see, here's another thing nobody's talking about. You've got this giant iron planet that they say is 47,000 miles across, getting ready to come up past us. And when it starts to approach us, it's going to start and have real serious effects.
So is it a planet or a failed star?
It's not a failed star. You know, I saw this thing up close. It did not look like a failed star. It looked just like our sun.
Right.
Okay. Would you call our sun a failed star?
No. Okay. Well, you had said planet. I wasn't sure if it was like a failed star brown dwarf or a full sun. So it's a full sun?
It looks to me like a miniature sun, just like the one we have. The only difference is our sun is giving off flames and stuff, and this one's doing the same thing as it, but it's giving off this red iron oxide cloud of dust around it. And until it got close, we couldn't even tell what was in there. We could see it was hot, and it looked like it was just a dull red when we were first able to discern it through the red cloud. But as it approached, it started to become more apparent that this thing is just orange hot.
Right.
And it's got this enormous, and I mean enormous, at least 50 or 100,000 miles on each side of it, this red dust cloud that goes all the way around it. I know when we were watching it, as it started to make the upward swing to approach behind our sun, it was amazing. The red dust cloud settled down. Instead of being round, it started to settle down into a V, like wings, upside-down wings.
Right.
And I thought, boy, I wonder if that's where the ancient Sumerians got the idea this thing had wings, because, you know, centrifugal force is a funny thing. When it comes back up around the planet, when we see it in the sky, my guess is it's going to look like it's got wings, because centrifugal force is going to be pulling the red iron oxide dust and particles out to one side. This thing's going to look like a big red dragon, exactly like all the ancient Sumerians and the Chinese and all the rest of them that had documented this thing's passing before. It didn't look like a white ball or a snow cloud or nothing. It looked like a big red iron oxide dust cloud with a superheated star in the middle of it. And, I mean, you know, and that's what we've seen. So, you know, I don't care what anybody else says. There's a possibility. There's more than one thing out there. You know, I watched it through the Hubble Space Telescope, And when this thing looked like it was across the street, the Hubble got cut off and they encrypted it, and that was the end of any transmissions we had to watch. And we know that the Hubble, in order to be in the shadow of the Earth, had to be at an angle, and so that meant it was looking downward. And this thing was coming up underneath of us, and I tell you the honest to God truth, I personally think this thing is real close to us right now. But, you know, that's just my general feeling that, you know, and I'm a pretty psychic guy. I have the feeling that this thing is right close by and that we're going to see it any time. Okay? Because, listen, they've known about this thing forever. And I mean, they've known about it forever. I mean, if I read about it in a science magazine in 1961, that tells you that, I mean, it's only 1,800 years away. How could they not be able to see it when it came around the backside of the last sun and headed this way?
Right.
You have to know they've been watching it, because if you know, Carl Sagan was showing stuff that they took with their old telescopes that was billions and billions of miles away. And this thing's only 1,800 years away. Well, and by 1930, it was only 70 years away. You know, we do estimate that this thing, let me give you a thing, maybe you can figure out your own timeline. We estimated that this thing is traveling around 3,500 miles an hour, okay?
Okay.
That was our estimate of its speed. Now, it has been picking up speed, and that's the reason why we think it's going to arrive early, because when it comes around the backside of the sun, it's got to double that speed in order to attain breakaway speed to leave the sun and not wind up orbiting it. It's never orbited the sun in the past that we know of, so that means that it's going to have to attain breakaway speed to head back out into space. Now, you look at the NASA videos, photos, and all this other crap those morons put on the internet. This thing is coming in. It's going to, as soon as it goes around the top of the sun, it's going to go back out into space.
Right.
And it's going to do this really fast. When it goes past us, it's going to go past us so fast that we'll almost have no time to get ready. That's my opinion, but, you know, just drawing it out on paper a few times and thinking about it, and I went, you know, if this thing picks up enough speed to make breakaway speed, then that means it's going to come past us. You know, this thing, according to what I was told, is that this thing is approximately 47,000 miles in diameter, you know, 4 or 5 times the size of the Earth, and it'll come past us, and we won't have a lot of warning, and we won't get to see it in the sky until it's on us. Now, I was told that the poles are not shifting at 42 miles a year. They're shifting at 42 miles a day. And the reason is because this planet is rolling over to face this thing. Now, when it goes by, it's not going to push our North Pole away. It's going to grab our southern pole with its northern pole, and it's going to be like somebody kicked this planet in the ass. That earthquake that it talks about in Revelations, when the opening of the sixth seal comes, from what I've been told, that's very accurate, because that's exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be a massive earthquake when it locks onto us. As it goes past us, we're going to follow it right upside down. The oceans are just going to be roaring from pole to pole, as you could well guess they would, because if you take a planet that's 7,000 miles across and roll it upside down in 30 minutes, you're going to have some real serious problems with wind and water. We should be preparing to expect this thing to show up any time.
So this particular insider is stating in the most revealing terms that something ominous is heading our way that NASA has known about for decades. Nibiru, aka Planet X, and referred to by the Vatican as Wormwood, has a mass that is 3 to 5 times the mass of Jupiter. Its composition is cesium, iron oxide, iron, oxygen, and ozone. And according to the interview by the Hubble Insider, it consists of 7 planets and moons that orbit it and innumerable asteroids. Its existence is known by all of the major governments of the world, and they are prepared, as I described earlier in this presentation. The object is very big, and until recently it is a red dwarf star visible only in the infrared spectrum. The agent claims that the government is monitoring the system and that in 2008 it could be seen in high detail with infrared telescopes. But the manner of observation is beginning to change. Using deductive logic, a number of independent videos are capturing its close approach now. We can speculate about its existence and whether the images and videos being published on a regular basis are genuine captures. But it doesn't change the narrative that something big is out there. Even the most reputable scientists are coming to the same conclusion that we have been warning about for many years now. That whatever is out there must be found and determined as to its impact upon the solar system and planet Earth. So it's no longer a question of whether it actually exists, but rather its actual location and how long before its absolute impact will be felt on our planet. In closing, I wanted to share with you a few troubling observations that were posted recently on Facebook. The first one is a capture from the Skycam Observatory in Deakin, Australia, showing the two-sun phenomenon. Now, the sun's companion has been visible in this side-by-side view on all Skycam for several days now, which indicates that the Nemesis system is rising to the ecliptic, as I mentioned in the video which I published on October the 28th. So something is definitely taking place now, and it behooves us to start paying careful attention to the skies. So if any of our viewers and subscribers have anything of value, any type of information or images you care to share with us, please forward them over here for a review as soon as you can. Also mentioned in this video presentation was the indication that this system would be accompanied by a long trail of debris consisting of fairly large-sized meteors and asteroids. The number of space objects that are penetrating the Earth's magnetic field has increased substantially in the past couple of years. So take a look at this incredible capture from Japan on October the 31st. And finally, if this doesn't blow you away, check out this eerie sky captured from Las Palmas, Spain on October the 26th. So as you can see, something definitely is going on that is very difficult to explain. It was in mid-August of this year, as some of you are aware, that myself and my family members and a number of friends were among the many tens of thousands who suffered the worst flooding in recorded history here in southeastern Louisiana. We are still recovering from that devastation. The funny thing about all of this is that it seems that we encounter one extreme weather event after another. Since the Great Flood of 2016, we have had what is now considered to be one of the most severe droughts that this area has encountered in recent times for this time of the year. Not only has our temperatures been steadily above normal, but the rainfall has registered less than 1/4 of an inch for the past 2 months. So I can tell you firsthand from my experiences that things are changing quickly here on Earth and in the heavens. And it's important